Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Planet Film Network. I am one of your hosts, Sean Monk.
I'm your host, TJ Cornwell.
And tonight we are finally back. I can't even tell you, this exact live stream has been rescheduled in our software 3 times.
Yeah.
But that actually is to say we didn't actually do an official show since I came back from my trip, but we did do like 2 hours on Thunderbolts, which is on the trailer or on the channel right now. And we are going to be talking about the brand new Superman trailer in just 1 second here. TJ, do we want to make time for a movie grid this week?
Yeah, let's do a quick one. Just do
All
the
right.
easy one though. Don't do the hard one.
Yeah.
Like we did last time. That one was brutal.
Movie grid. Moviegrid.io. You have to be very specific. All right. Let's see. Can we see that?
I can, yes.
Perfect. I actually think I have it in like a condensed window here. I think this displays it a little bit better than the bigger one. All right. So this is just today's No Funny Business. Let's jump right into this. Tom Hanks, Diane Keaton, Al Pacino, Oscar nominated, double letter word. Okay.
Double letter word. Okay.
And then released from 1980 to 2010. I feel like Al Pacino, I'm going Dick Tracy.
Okay. I like that.
Which does not have a double letter. Boom.
Wow. There we go.
I feel like he's difficult.
Tom Hanks.
What about you ready for this one? Extremely loud and incredibly close.
I don't even know what that is. Oh, no.
Oh, it must have been 2011.
Oh, okay.
Oh man.
I don't even know if I know what that movie is.
It's like a 9/11 movie. It's just like a following this family right before it happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those like surprise 9/11
Dang.
movies. That's wow. I really would have thought that would have been within a decade, but damn, that would have been nice. All right, what's next? I feel like I burned.
Let's try to get Pacino out of the way. I feel like.
All
so if you want to do Oscar nominated, Godfather is definitely too easy. Trying to think of what. Oh, do like you think Scent of a Woman?
I mean, I feel like that is the one that he won for.
Right, so it might be too.
It's the most obvious Oscar, but it might not be the most obvious guess. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I feel like we could go for it.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, see, I feel like most people go to not even what he actually won for.
Right.
Oh, how about this? Double R's, double letters all over the place.
Yep. Nice.
Boom.
Nice.
All right. Oscar nominated. Who do you want to drill into, Tom or Diane?
Let's do Diane, I guess, for Oscar. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head.
How about because nobody thinks of her, Godfather?
Oh, okay. I like that. Yep. I was thinking like Annie Hall.
Yeah. Oh, I guess a lot of people think about it. Never mind. Well, Annie Hall probably would have been even higher. All right, so let's see. Double letter. I mean, Annie Hall has double letter. This I'm definitely. I gotta go. First Wives Club.
Oh yeah.
Boom! Wow, this is pretty high. Higher than I would have thought. Let's see. It's complicated. No,
double letter word and title.
Oh.
You know what? This is actually what I thought you were going to do for the other one. But I guess never mind. I just realized this movie came out like 6-7 years ago. So I guess that was
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Book Club, the next chapter, that came out like a year ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Boom. Let's go.
All right, let's do Oscar nominated, and we'll do the either 80 or double letter. So nominated.
Let's go Apollo. Oh, but that could be that. We might have to save that for your double letter.
Okay.
What about Castaway?
What about like Toy Story?
Was Toy Story nominated though?
I think so. It must have been. I cannot imagine it wasn't. I
Let-
think you could choose
Toy
any.
Story 3.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Boom. Double letter. Do you want to do Apollo?
Yep, I'm good with that.
And then I
Nice,
feel like
nice.
this got to go with the Captain.
Yep.
Which also could have been double letter. Oh wait. Oh, hang on. Ooh, I think Captain Phillips might have been like 2013.
What about like Da Vinci Code?
Oh yeah. Da Vinci Code. Oh, it's space. 1.1.
1.1. There we go.
Look at this.
All right, so we got
Most
Philadelphia.
popular.
Yeah, Forrest Gump. Wow, First Wives, was that the most popular?
Yeah, that was the most popular.
Okay. Oh, Dog Day. Okay, that makes sense.
That's
Heat.
a good one. Yeah, and then what's the rarest?
All
Cars.
Right, so Killing Lincoln.
Killing Lincoln. Incredible.
I don't even know if I ever heard of that.
He's probably like a voiceover. Donnie Brasco.
Chinese coffee.
I knew it was you.
Oh yeah, that documentary. I feel like that.
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
I feel like these are the people that guess that just like go on Letterboxd and hit like least viewed. All right, that was fun. That was quick, and we were good at that one. Yep. Yeah. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and jump over to, let's talk about this guy, the guy from the sky, because I don't know if you know this, TJ, but a friend of mine once told me that devils don't come from hell below us.
Okay.
No, they come from the sky.
Gotcha.
That was a different Lex Luthor in a very different time. Does anybody have any Jolly Ranchers on them? We got a brand new trailer for Superman. Superman, the movie from director James Gunn, the very first big screen entry in the new DCU under DC Studios by James Gunn and Peter Safran. What were your thoughts on this trailer? How did it hit you? Do you think that we were ready for another kind of full-length trailer? A little more, obviously, this is taking the cadence of this one's a little more story-focused, as most second trailers are. But what did you think on this one? Visual story, characters, Lois, Clark, Lex, Crypto.
Yeah, full 3-minute trailer. I thought it was really good, actually. I mean, there's stuff don't get me wrong, there's stuff in a lot of characters in this movie, it seems like. I don't think I even realized how many it was until this trailer. So hopefully they all have enough to do. I liked the start of the trailer, like the interview part and him kind of getting all defensive, which I thought was interesting. And that shot that you just had right there of the civilian helping him up out of the rubble that he was just like plummeted down into, I thought was really cool. I'm interested to see Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. I don't know. For some reason, it's just not. I don't know if I'm as excited for that as other aspects of this movie, I guess. But yeah, I thought it looked really good. The score really does it for me. I thought again in this trailer really knocked it out of the park. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Very interested to see Frank Grillo as the Secretary of Defense. I don't know how we got to that point because we left that character in what's the show called? Creature Commandos.
yeah.
He was nowhere close to that. So I don't know how we got there, but hopefully it is explained in some way. I would compare it to how Bucky becomes a congressman, and it just kind of seems like it's out of nowhere.
I was actually going to go another way, which is I was going to make the exact same reference as you, but I was going to say if Waller is Fury, does that make Rick Flag Sr. Val?
Oh, okay, yeah,
right. Because then and then even her, it was like all of a sudden she was the head of the CIA, and it was like, wait, when did that happen?
Yeah.
But But yeah, that's cool. I didn't even think about that it's like he's less the Nick Fury and more the Valentina of the universe. But yeah, I thought the trailer looked good. I gotta say, my anticipation for this is just nowhere near what it is for Fantastic Four right now. And that's just like very surprising because I'm excited for this movie, but none of the trailers have just given me that like absolute like being blown away, like wow feeling that I wish that they had. And that's just kind of where I'm at with it right now. I just feel like nothing has gone, oh wow, and like grabbed me in a really big way that I wish that it would. But that being said, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, do you think it has something to do with Fantastic Four, is leading into the big kind of, Doomsday and then Secret Wars, whereas Superman is like, it's the first movie of this entire universe. And if it doesn't go well, I think probably just scrapped, honestly, everything else.
Yeah, I think honestly, my hype being so high for Fantastic Four was definitely increased after Thunderbolts. And then just knowing that we are, I'm happy to see it, but I think a lot of podcasts are, whether they loved Thunderbolts or not, a lot of the podcasts that I watch now refer to, they were a little down, but it looks like Marvel's maybe on the up right now. And it's like that kind of conversation, I can't lie, as a Marvel fan, is like really getting me hyped just for everything that's coming right now. I mean, we got the Ironheart trailer today that I haven't even watched yet, actually. I might try to stay away from stuff on that just because I feel like there's going to be so much conversation about it anyways. I'd rather just like jump into it and not get anything. Just try to preserve whatever is there, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I think Fantastic Four more comes from that, and knowing that they're kind of stringing together a couple of what seem to maybe be hits to really get us going for Doomsday and stuff. Whereas, yeah, like Superman, it's like I don't ever like to go into things arms folded. In fact, I like usually call out people that I'm watching about going into things arms folded, but it just hasn't like wowed me. Like I love that first trailer. I love the whole look up campaign. The new poster is cool that it's just boom. Like the entire poster is Superman. Like it's just his torso and head. And that's just what the poster is. And I've loved all that stuff, but I gotta be honest, I was not impressed by the scene, right? That scene from IMAX that they put in front of Minecraft. And I know we talked about that heavily on the show when that came out, but that just kind of like, it got me a little like, oh, okay. And then there's so many people in this. But I will say I did like this trailer. I thought for me, the visuals, like, I think the movie looks clean and crisp, and it's definitely a totally different look for a DC movie. I think it is got that more. I think there was a little bit of this like kind of a cool color palette, like cool in terms of like the tone of the color. That Guardians 3 kind of had.
It is not gray like any Snyder movie was.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very far from that. But that being said, to me, I think some of the like very quick, like at the end of the trailer when he kind of like dive bombs the camera. Maybe it was my I was watching on my iPad, but it was pretty high resolution, but it just didn't look like, it looked like kind of off to me. It looked like the ending of like a CW season. And granted it's a trailer and everything like that, so I can't harp on that too much, but I just really I'm really hoping for this one. And I think that this trailer got me a little bit more there, but I just wish that I was like through the roof excited for this movie. But I still look at July and I'm still like, it is very clearly Fantastic Four, then Superman, then Jurassic for me in terms of what reverse order of the month, basically. So I'll gain interest as the month goes on. But yeah. But guys, let us know what did you guys think of the Superman trailer, the brand new trailer that is out today for Superman, which will be coming out. What is it? July 11th. Yeah, July 11th. All right. 1 second. That is good. That's good radio. So let's go ahead and dive. Oh, here we go. Now let's go ahead and dive into this comment here. The Superman trailer felt a little flat for me, but I do like the visual look of it, and I still have high hopes. Yeah, there you go. That's kind of, I think, a little bit more of what I was saying, but I want to get over to the way of life of the people that are like super super pumped for this, and I feel like I'm also just like Corn Sweat to me is just such an unproven entity that I'm
Mhm.
like, I really hope that just all this sinks. And I said it 2 years ago on the show. I'm not the biggest Rachel Brosnahan fan. So
Yeah.
I said, for a while, I was hoping that it would be Emma Mackey, but we shall see. I really like, I think by far, the favorite casting of mine in there is Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. But I agree with you that it's like, we're getting so little of him in the trailers that I'm
Mhm.
like, I wonder how much of this movie is on him, and kind of not if he'll deliver, but kind of what will he deliver
Yeah.
as Lex, because there's been so many different versions of Lex, from just like crooked businessman to the more like kind of kooky crazy guy that
Jesse
Eisenberg
Eisenberg.
played.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and jump over to what is going to be the bulk of our discussion. And we talked about before, I had a trip which took us off the air for 2 weeks, and then our schedules did not line up. Also, Disney decided to release 3 out, like it ended up being more like 2.5 every week, but 2.5 hours of television every week,
Yeah.
which we both had to try to somehow all watch before Wednesday night, which was not always something that we could do. So we decided we were just aiming for the finale to come back and just kind of discuss everything with you guys, and with each other, in detail about this guy who is Cassian Andor season 2. Um, let's see here. Now, I want to talk first and foremost in this about what were your hopes for season 2, and do you think that your level of hope or hype was met by season 2 before we get into anything else?
Um, I don't know if I had anything specific, just because it had been so long. I will say,
Mhm.
like, I was thinking about this last night after the show. After I watched the last episode, I was like, I remember when we were talking about this show, and first season hadn't even come out yet, and I was saying like, is anybody really asking for a Cassian Andor show? Like,
Mhm.
this just seems like something that nobody is really asking for or needs. Um, and I will say, boy, was I proven wrong, obviously, on that one. But I think, yeah, where they ended it, I will say, is just everything I feel like you could ask for. And fitting it in a tight 2-season storyline. I don't think I realized that this was supposed to be like 5 originally.
Yeah,
That there was talk of that.
the original pitch was for 5 seasons.
Yeah,
Yeah, but then it got shortened to 2.
right. Which, I mean, I don't know. I feel like maybe less is more. Honestly, at this point, I feel like maybe
Mhm.
that kind of would have been that is in hindsight maybe a mistake, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think they accomplished everything they intended to when they made this. They kind of lead it right up to Rogue One, perfectly, just like Rogue One leads right up to A New Hope, perfectly. And yeah, I was very happy with the way they ended the show, and sad to see it go, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, uh I just, yeah, going to what my question was. Um I was really really amped for this season, and I feel like we're going to go through it basically. It's spoiler alert for our discussion. We're going to go through it kind of arc by arc.
Okay.
And
Yep.
then we're going to loop back around and talk a little in depth about some of the key characters, just on an overall show or overall season if they only appear in this season. Um, but I feel like the first arc definitely scared me. If I'm being totally honest with where
Yeah.
this is going, the first arc kind of scared me in the sense of, I was like, this is great, but was the first season just
Yeah. A fluke.
like too good? Yeah, or
Yeah.
or was the first season all they had? kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, was going back to this well a mistake kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I think the name of the live stream that we were going to come back with was like Andor season 2, is it really as good as, I said it was, is it really as good as we think? That
Right.
was what I was going to name the stream. Meaning I can't even really trust myself with how I'm watching and how it's coming in. And then to watch the overall, the 4 arcs, but how the arc of the overall season built to Gorman, and how everything before that was really in service of this one huge major keystone event that we have heard about in Rebels, and we've heard about obviously in past stuff even before that, but mainly in Rebels, that we kind of knew that something was going on. We heard Mon Mothma address the Gorman people and the Gorman shipping lanes throughout season 1, or at least a couple of times in season 1, and to see everything that you could have been like, oh, where is this going? What is this
Mhm.
piece of it? To see all of it just build and crescendo in this crazy kind of not even finale, just mid-season moment. And then to see the rest of the season where you go, okay, now that we built to this Gorman thing, to have 9, 10, 11, and 12 just transition to this insane, we are purely focused on the main rebellion and how things are going to be affecting, and how we get the rebellion that saw how we get the group that saw what happened on Gorman to the Gorman people. How does
Mhm.
that affect it? All season we've been hearing, the line of, oh, then it'll burn very brightly. Well,
Yeah.
what does it mean when all those people then come to the rescue of the fire? And I love that the last 4 episodes, or the last 3 episodes in particular, really highlighted that. And there's a couple of key things I'm really excited to talk mostly about. I think the final 2 arcs, obviously. But we are going to jump into talking about the first arc here, which is the first episode is 1 year later. Basically, I'm going to go over a couple of key points, and then we're just going to jump into
Perfect.
wherever we want to go.
Yeah.
So basically, we start out. Cassian is undertaking a mission to steal a TIE Avenger prototype, which then obviously runs into complications and crash lands with a group of native, or sorry, not a group of native people, in like a native environment in this forest. Crash lands with this group of rebels that are kind of at each other's throats when he lands in there. Then we have Bix, Brasso, Willman, and B2 are hiding out on Mina Rao as farmers. Basically, this is what they've been doing since they all escaped Ferrix together. And then we have Bix dealing with all of the Dr. Gorst stuff, as well as then eventually dealing with the what happens with the Imperial, which we can definitely spend as much time as you want to talking about
Mhm.
that stuff. Then we jump over Dedra. We have her attending the secret meeting by Orson Krennic, who we also now have in this show here, played again, obviously, incredibly by Ben Mendelsohn, which is basically talking about the exploitation of Gorman's resources, where you have her, Partagaz, and Krennic kind of all interacting for the first time this season. And then obviously Mon Mothma is we are now 1 year later with her after the kind of betrothal or pairing of her daughter Lita with Davos Sculdun's son, to kind
Mhm.
of marry this really pure name in the Chandrillan culture, Mothma, with this like kind of ruthless, notorious gangster Davos Sculdun, to kind of, with the deal of her stooping down to his level to accept his money for the rebellion, basically. And then we have Take Holma at the wedding, kind of pressuring her, with Luthen also being at the wedding to figure everything out with that. So where do you want to jump her? Also, then we have Cyril kind of mixed in with the Dedra stuff, as well
Yeah.
as obviously Clea. So where do you want to jump into any of this or any of that? We can kind of take it. We can take it beat by what I just said, or if you want to jump anywhere, you can jump anywhere.
Yeah, I think I just want to say, I thought with this first, batch of 3 episodes,
Yeah.
I think the Cassian arc of this overall 3 episodes was probably the weakest part of the show, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. And when when I was watching this for the first time, I was like, man, like
Uh-oh.
can he like get off this freaking planet?
Yeah.
Like it's just,
Yeah.
it's like he spends his like the full 3 episodes pretty much on the one planet. And I thought it started off really strong too with him stealing that TIE fighter from the
Yeah.
facility.
Just starting out with that that worker and
Yeah.
kind of this is who Cassian is now. He is this agent of he is not yet the almost partner level of Luthen that we get a little later in the season. He is very much a Vel, boots on the ground agent, gets the mission, goes on the mission. And I loved his little mission statement to be, put it obviously to her, which was, her whole thing of I have friends here. I actually liked it here.
Right.
Is there anything you can tell me that like will like am I doing the right thing? Is this just a waste? Like have I wasted my life here? And him giving that great monologue to start out with the whole like you what was it called? With the whole you're like coming home to yourself. You're doing what's finally that feeling within you that something wasn't right. You're finally doing what is right. Like you will rest easy knowing that you won't rest easy until you know you're doing everything you can to take down these bastards. That's what he says. I was waiting for the actual line to come to me. But yeah, that whole thing was I thought fantastic. And then the next 2 episodes of Cassian was very much.
It was just kind of back and forth with like, oh, now, these 2 rebel sides are kind of split. They're on the same team, like, and I think what I will say when I was watching that, I did think it played into how hard it is for this rebellion to function. Just because, so, and we see it with like Luthen and Mon Mothma and everybody on Yavin, like later on. It's just, there's these sides, or Saw, where it's like there's these sides where they have completely different ways of going about rebelling. And it's kind of being able to foster that into like one common goal instead of having these like fractions. And I guess you kind of see that with this little smaller group. And the whole part of it just didn't quite, I think it just didn't quite work, just because it was like, we want to see, kind of the crew together. And, right now we're just kind of cutting Cassian off from everybody else.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
it's very Last Jedi.
Yeah. And they're all on the farm planet while he's kind of just stuck on this other planet being, so I will say that was probably the weakest part of the entire season.
Yeah. It is funny that you say that, because it did have at least on the exit, the good reveal that was Yavin. That like they were behind the temples, because it's like you just made the analogy to the later rebellion, and it's like it's the early rebellion in the exact same spot, making the same mistakes that the later rebellion will make of not trusting each other and not knowing how to fight. That's what so Alex Damon at Star Wars Explained always says. It's and in Force Setter, it's like Star Wars is not just about why you fight; it's about how you fight. With the whole, even going back to Yoda and Empire with. Don't bring your weapons because you won't need them.
Right.
Like your intention will color what happens to you, basically.
Next thing I want to talk about, and I want to bounce off you too.
Oh, here we go.
Because my memory, once you start talking about it, my memory will come back about it. But so like Dedra and Cyril and that whole kind of what happened in those 3 episodes. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was great to see, it was great to see Dedra and Partagas interacting, because I know, and we're going to talk about Partagas, I think, a lot in this discussion, which is great considering what I'm about to say. With Krennic coming into the show, I don't know if I said this to you, but I definitely said it in person to Alex, my friend at work, which was, I was like, I hope that we aren't losing Partagas to like make room for Krennic in the script. I was really worried about that, because I just thought that Anton Lesser did such a good job in that role in the first season. And obviously now we know 100% not. I mean, Partagas was an even bigger presence, I would say, in this season than he was in the first season. So seeing their dynamic right off the bat at this kind of retreat thing, the reveal that Krennic, boom, there he is. He's like the second scene that you see. And then just how very like Nazi-ish it felt was, I thought, just great. And at first you're like, oh, he's talking about the Death Star, and then you're like, oh no, he's not talking about the Death Star. He's talking about Gorman, and then it's like, oh, but he's talking about Gorman because of the Death Star. Like it's like
Right.
that. It's like, why do we need Gorman? Well, we need this mineral for the energy project, and you're like, okay. Then you realize it's like everything with this guy is the Death Star. That's all this guy does, which I think is a great interaction all the way at the very end of the show. But to go to Dedra specifically, I think her kind of knockdown from everything that happens with her kind of losing out on the Axis case after Ferrex in season 1, and her saying like, I don't want to do Gorman. That's like a demotion. That's what the conversation they have. And he's like, it might look like a demotion, but it'll mean that like you are Krennic's point person on this, which can only be, it can only be good for your career. Which I thought was, really, really cool. And then her kind of the beginnings of her control over Cyril, I thought was really, really cool.
Was them meeting his mom this
that was basically most of what Cyril had in the beginning arc, because it was mostly Dedra at the ISB and then her coming home, and then we would see Cyril at home. And you kind of see that he is, you do see him at work, or he's just still at the Bureau of Standards, and that he's now the guy with the clipboard telling other people, it can be really fulfilling here, when he is clearly like just, flopping in the wind. But you see the beginnings of, and again, it's like what they did in season 1, where you go, oh, this Dedra, she's an Imperial, but she's not getting credit at work. She's doing all this stuff. These guys are missing everything, and like she's understanding, what's going on. Like you're kind of rooting for her in season 1, and then when everything happens with Bix and Dr. Gorst, you're like, okay, this person's terrible. Right. Dedra kind of does it again this season, where you're like, yeah, you freaking tell his mom, like you tell her how it's going to be. And then it's like, well, now you realize that was the beginnings of the grasp that she was going to take on Cyril.
No, yeah, she's only saying it like that. She's like, because I'm going to control him, and I don't need you, messing anything up.
It's not her, going, I want you in his life less so that he can be happy. It's I want you in his life less so that I can control his life more.
I will say I think there was some genuine affection there, though. And we see it kind of late. We see it the third arc, I would say, in those 3 episodes on Gorman and everything that happens. I feel like we get to a point where, she just needs him to hold on a bit longer, I guess, and then they can, do whatever they want. And obviously, we know what happens at that point. But I wouldn't say it's like, it's like there's no love there or anything like that.
Yeah, I think definitely it was interesting to see kind of their relationship kind of reveal itself, all the different many facets of it. And I think it does start out showing its more like actual outwardly romantic sense first, which I think is good. But then you kind of slowly realize, as Cyril does, which, just talking about him right now, by the way, I'm just having the thought of like how much I missed him as a presence in the final arc. But yeah, we kind of see the truth of their relationship as Cyril does. And I kind of like the way that they did that it's like, you only really realize how badly Dedra has this guy in over his head, until obviously it's too late, but we'll talk about that in a second. But what did you think about, Bix and everybody and Willman and, their whole kind of subplot with the Imperials and everything like that on the planet? And then after that, we'll kind of go over to Monte and Luthen at the wedding.
Yeah, I thought it was just interesting to see them, just trying to survive on this planet and hiding for the most part. And, just farming, going back and forth, trying to avoid the authorities as much as they could. Granted, they're doing that because they were kind of forced from their home, specifically like the farmer that gives them up. I thought that was really just kind of shitty, and that obviously it was a terrible thing to do, but I don't know, for some, in that moment I thought that they would be safe for some reason.
I actually don't think he did give them up.
No?
I think
Okay.
what it was, and there was people that went both ways on this at the
Mhm.
time. And Grant, it was like 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah.
But I thought they were there just like they just knew or found out because of the net tightening in on them. I think what Brasso was doing by yelling at him was like protecting the farmer. Like
Mm.
saying in front of the Imperials, like, "Oh, that's it, huh? You turned us in, didn't you? Like, you
Yeah.
son of a bitch! Like, you're loyal to the Empire. Like, I can't believe you would do this." Because they give a kind of like a Bruce Wayne Alfred nod to each other, when they're not
Mhm.
looking, where it's like a
Yeah.
thank you for doing that for my family kind of thing. But I think you go either way. But it's a interesting thing. Um, yeah, I thought all that
What
stuff was good.
so I mean, we didn't really dance around it, but so what did you think? What did you think of the big scene and the kind of hut with Bix and the Imperial kind of? I guess who I don't know what his rank was, but
Mhm.
the Imperial officer that was hotly debated over social media.
Yeah, I
Once
mean, I
that came
think
out.
that like this I don't know. I mean, I don't know how we can I know that our show we don't really get into like
No,
crazy political stuff, but
I'll just say this: I think it is a ridiculous thing to
here we go.
say
No, I'm just kidding.
uh, that this is something that the Empire would be against, or that Vader
Oh
would
yeah,
never
yeah.
stand for this treatment of women or anybody. Like
Mhm.
this Vader has killed millions of people. They fucking blew up a planet in New Hope. No other thoughts. You think they'll be against like sexual assault? I don't think
Mhm.
so. I
Yeah.
just it was just mind blowing to me when I saw that being said. It was just this most, and then the conversation over them using the word rape. I was like,
Yeah.
what do we do? I get like I I don't know if it's one of those things where it's like, whoa, we're in a galaxy far, far away. Can we come up with some more language that's not so like used in everyday like
Yeah.
we use here and today? I just think some of that stuff is just the most nitpickish stuff where it's like that's what it was.
Yeah.
So we're
He
gonna call it what
glarped
it
me.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
like what I don't understand the problem.
I think uh I agree with everything that you just said. I thought it was perfect. I thought it was good to have that in Star Wars because this is the show to deal it.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this. We have Pete. Oh, I didn't even see that. I wasn't even looking at the comments. We have Pete. If you're still watching, welcome, Pete. To steal from the Empire, you just walk in like you belong. Yeah. I have been hopefully TJ takes my meaning by this. I have actually been watching season 1 of Andor at a
Okay.
local screening house in
Oh,
the area,
yeah.
which has been awesome to see those on the big screen. So I recognize that line right away from season 1 when Cassian first meets Luthen. Incredible moment in season 1. So Pete, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. But yeah, to the Bix thing, I agree with it 100%. I think it was great to see it. I mean, this is the place in Star Wars that you would address something like that. I think there is a bigger kind of thing with Bix's story that we'll talk about when we get into characters later on. That I'll focus more on over there. But for this episode and for this arc as it stands, I thought it was perfect. I thought it made sense, and I thought it was in line with everything that we've seen. I mean, like I think it is ridiculous to say that. But whether they allow it or don't allow it, the point of this whole show and the point of all of Star Wars and just storytelling is that like the Empire is the thing that's not working.
Mhm.
So like it doesn't really matter what they do or don't allow. And then I think it's really obvious by the end of this season, but this whole show is showing us that the Empire doesn't work. So it's
Yeah.
like there are people doing stuff that they allow, there are people doing stuff that they don't allow.
Mhm.
They are criminals. Like, you know what I mean? And sure, we have met plenty of Imperials who have turned good, who have stayed within the Empire and not done things like that. There are plenty of good examples. Somebody who is definitely a villain in this show, but I'd like to think is a in the only way you can be under the Empire a morally okay person is like somebody like a Yularen. right? Where it's like we know him from the Clone Wars, where it's like he was an honest, good-hearted man just in the Navy. And then 20 years in the Empire, he's given crazy ISB speeches. But I will say he did not deserve to die in the Death Star. That guy only knew about it for a month, and then he got blown up. That's terrible. My voice is like going on me. I'm going to keep drinking water. But yeah, I thought that stuff was great. Let's talk about the wedding.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I did want to say, and then transition to Mon Mothma. The one line that I was practicing in my head to say here is, I think it's very telling and very interesting that there was two, let's say, hot button words used in this show this season that are very politically charged at the moment. And I think it's very telling that there was this huge conversation, and everybody in the manosphere and the Star Wars theories of the world felt like they had to get their opinion out over what happens to Bix and the use of the word rape. But there is not that backlash, and people are not going against people when the word genocide was used in Arc 3. And I think it's very, obviously, I think it's fantastic that this show chose to go to those places with two female characters, nonetheless. Not that it has to be a female that either one of those things has to do with, but two female characters who are these huge characters on this show, and they both chose to use like the word. There's like dancing around an issue, there's touching on the themes of it, and then there is saying the word. And I just think that it's interesting that, this show, particularly in today's climate with everything going on in the world war-wise, to say the word and use the word genocide, unprovoked genocide, that is. And then for this scene to use the, capital R rape, I just think was fantastic. And honestly, I don't want to sound like, oh, Disney shill or whatever, but it's like, those are words. I think it was Jen Landa on Force Center that was like, I think it's important to emphasize that, yeah, Tony Gilroy wrote that, and then Dan Gilroy rewrote it, and then whoever else did a dialogue pass, but no one along that process told them to take it out. And it's like, that is a company that on some level is like, yes, we want to put this message out, and this is the show to do it. They're not going to hit on things like that in the Book of Boba Fett. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to touch on stuff like that, but this is the show where they can do stuff like that. And I think that that's very important. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Mon Mothma and the wedding.
Yeah, she's kind of dealing with obviously having to wed her child off to this, I guess he'd be considered like a gangster, right?
Yeah.
So that they can fund the rebellion and keep the money flowing. I thought it all worked great. I know it ties into Luthen in some way, shape, or form. I'm trying to remember because he's not really in this arc as much, if I recall correctly. Right?
He's just in it in like he's at the wedding. Like he brings the sculpture for Skulden to like give as the present, and then he is there to he's there to basically deal with Tay Kolma in the later episodes, where he's like, what's going on with this guy, and Mon has to tell him that he's threatening him, and then he's like, all right, he has to be dealt with. Right. So he's just kind of there popping in and out to Mon.
And he's dealt with.
Yeah, and he has that great line where he goes, it wasn't even that long ago. It was only 4 weeks, but it was 12 hours ago of dialogue. And this is like the most dialogue rich show Disney Plus has literally ever made. It was at the wedding where she goes like, about Tay Kolma, she's like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, oh, that must be great for you. Like, it's great for you that you don't have to think about things like this.
And so this is, and I think just kind of playing it, I know this is the Mon Mothma kind of arc, and and it ties into Luthen as well, obviously, but those are those moments throughout the series in general where you're constantly the kind of back and forth on Luthen, where I can see in Mon Mothma's shoes, I'd be like, will you shut the, like, you're also high and mighty, like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
I have this cross to bear, you know, where, and then we see it in, you know, specifically the last arc of the show where he does something in that first episode where I'm like, this is why I don't like him, because he does these things, and then, you know, as the episode goes on, it's like, oh man, I feel for him in this moment. So it's
Mm-hmm.
this constantly flipping back and forth I have with him. Yeah, I don't know. Do you feel this? You probably feel the same way, right?
About Luthen,
Yeah.
I don't know. I am really excited to see where the conversation goes when we talk about just his character straight up.
Yeah.
But yeah, we will see on that. We'll put a pin in that.
Right.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about with? And then obviously we should. Let me just make sure I'm getting all the pictures out that I have. Then we have Cinta at the very end of the wedding arc, coming up to take Kolma, and then obviously Mon Mothma dancing it out.
Yeah.
Dancing out her frustrations on the dance floor.
I will say real quick on the Mon Mothma point. I think it is, and again, this is kind of tying back to Luthen. I don't think he can say like, "Oh, how good for you! You don't have to, you know, you don't have to think about that stuff at all." It's like she's still risking her life to fund this thing, you know.
Yeah,
even through back chat, you know, it's not coming straight out of her account, but like, you know, if anybody was to ever find out, she'd probably be dead. So it's not like she's not doing anything. It's not like she's living carefree, like, "Oh, here's the money," you know. I don't got to worry about anything.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes when he says those things, it's like, you didn't have to say that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll get into Luthen's character, but let's see. Real quick here, Michelle in chat says using the word rape is perfect for this show because there are so many powerful women in this story, and it shows that powerful women can go through sensitive things and stay strong. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that you see that with Bix, for sure, which again, I'm most excited. I'm looking at the list I have here of just characters in general. I feel like, yeah, Bix is definitely Bix and Luthen are the two that I'm most excited to get into a little bit deeper. But yeah, very big agree on that one, and lots of powerful women, not even just Bix and Mon, but Bix, Mon, Vel, Clea, Cinta, even in her own way. Dedra is a very powerful woman in this story. It's just about you know, what side of power that you're on, if you're Dedra. But yeah, very, very cool. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears here over to arc number 2, and I found these awesome the costumes of Andor season 2, and they broke them down per arc. So like this is arc 1, arc 2, and then arc 3. They, as of when we went live, they did not put one out yet for arc 4, but I'm sure we will talk about it. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk a little Andor season 2 arc 2, Ever Been to Gorman. So this is episodes 4 through 6, obviously. And this is really about the escalation on Gorman. We have we basically land back into the story where on Gorman, Cyril Karn is embedded. We find out later in the episodes to basically monitor, stoke, and inflame the Gorman front. And that is on Dedra's orders, who is putting Cyril on this at Partagaz's orders, because at the convention in episode 1, that is the suggestion that Dedra makes to Krennic, is the way to secure Gorman is to basically embolden an uprising to then smash it down as hard as you can. And that is exactly what is happening. So we have Cyril on there doing all of that. Cassian and Bix are living together in the Coruscant apartment, where Bix is going through a lot of stuff, taking kind of sleeping pills, sleeping medication a lot. Luthen is worried about her, goes to check on her. Cassian is having stuff where he is starting to not trust Luthen as much, where he's wondering what his actual motivations are, getting a little sick of how he's treating him. Then on the flip side, we have a big storyline for Vel and Cinta in this one, where they, after Cassian kind of bombs out on Gorman and says, I don't think they're ready, I don't think that we should do this, after donning the incredible Varian Sky disguise, which was a very fun episode in the middle of all of this stuff. Just going, I don't think Gorman's ready for this. I don't think that we should be doing this. Vel and Cinta are sent in by Luthen after him to kind of make this bit. It reminded me of, this was like the Rogue One of the Gorman front. It was like finally like the big strikeout that they're going to do is they are going to rob this Imperial convoy to kind of prove once and for all that this building that they claim is like an enrichment center or like an office building is actually like a military base and a garrison that they are building there, which also ties into that incredible story that the bellhop tells of the Tarkin massacre that in the square of Gorman 15 years ago. So right at the dawn of the Empire, Tarkin landed his ship there and killed, I think they said, like dozens of civilians, which obviously the Gorman Plaza is like the biggest location throughout all of these episodes here. And then we also have Clea and Luthen back on Coruscant dealing with a whole bunch of stuff, namely the last episode being the great episode with Skulden's party, where with everybody there, where Clea has to try and remove the listening device with the help of Lonnie, where we also get an incredible Mon Mothma and Krennic kind of verbal showdown, which is fantastic. And that whole scene is very, very heart pounding as well. So where do you want to jump into here? Arc 2, we were kind of building up Gorman. We're kind of dealing with the Coruscant, not underworld, but the high society of Coruscant and how that can be just as cutthroat. Where do you want to jump to?
I would like to start on the Gorman and their rebellion, and how that kind of ties in with Cassian. Personally, when I was first seeing this, these episodes, I was on Cassian's side completely. I was like, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
And again, this kind of leads into what I was talking about earlier with the first 3 episodes with the rebels that were kind of splintered between the two. He's kind of asking, I don't remember what specific questions he's asking, but he's talking to them and they're like, oh yeah, we got this intelligence from this Imperial spy. And he's like, are you sure? Like, you're absolutely 100% sure that that's real? Like, and this is something that, like,
feeding false information is what they do.
And this is something that drove me insane. And it drove me insane even in the last arc, where I was like, these guys, some of these rebels, they are just dense. I'm like, guys, this random Imperial guy's like, oh yeah, I'm and again, this kind of plays into the whole, like, we're a young rebellion, we're building, we're not quite there, we're all fractured. And it's just like, I just want to jump through the screen and be like, okay, he's clearly feeding you information that he will use against you at some point. And obviously we see what happens in the next arc, but yeah, I just thought that, again, as mad as it made me, I thought it all played well into the whole, like, this is a rebellion that's still building, and it is not where it needs to be.
And rebellions are built on hope.
On hope,
that is
yes.
true.
And yeah, I just thought it was all played really well. I'm trying to remember kind of how we get into the last episode. I did think that was really tough to watch, just because of who unfortunately dies, but also, like, the ending when they're in the cargo thing, kind of driving, and the screaming match that's going on. I forget her name, the character. You
mean Vel?
Yes, Vel. When she's yelling at the guy with the gun.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she told you. She said the only 2 of them get guns and nobody else get guns, and you had to bring your gun. It's just some of those things where it's like, we're never gonna topple the Empire if we make these mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that guy, his name is Sam. He's he's only got like 2 big scenes in the whole show, but yeah, and I like that the show took the moment, though, in the next arc, that Sam gets a little bit of a hero moment with K2SO, which is really cool. Because that shows that, like what you just said, we're never going to be able to get this thing going if we're constantly fighting each other and can't even listen to each other. Which goes back again with Vel to, like, asking Cassian repeatedly, like, will you be able to follow Terramon's orders once the mission gets going? Like, we got to fall in line, otherwise we're done. Like, we're done before we even start. And I think that like Eldani, in such a cool way, just becomes this like microcosm of the entire Rebel Alliance. That it is really cool that this show is definitely displays in a lot of interesting multi-angled ways. But yeah, what about everything with the end with Krennic at the party and Clea with the listening device and having to remove that? I just thought that all that stuff was like so tense when the episode starts and you just hear it reminded me of Avengers what is that, Infinity War, with the Asgardian ship is blown up and it starts with just like the radio chatter. When you just hear all this radio chatter and you're like, what the hell is going on? And then you hear Clea listening into this like they're talking about antiquities and Skulden, and we need to get this whole thing re-examined. And that's the very first thing that you hear in the entire arc. And the fact that like you're like, what does that mean? Is like, oh my God, is Luthen like done for? Like, is all the stuff that Luthen's been selling fakes? Like, and it's like, it's none of that. It's just their arc in this was one listening device that they put in one gangster's house that they get into a fight about. Like, we never even got anything useful out of it. Like, and now it's going to blow our entire operation. And like, for what? Like, I love that it wasn't like it was in Krennic's office where it's like,
right,
that's been the information pipeline that we've had for years. It's like, they're like, this whole operation is going to be taken down because of this one listening device that I didn't even want to put in, that hasn't even given us anything helpful in 3 years. I thought was fantastic. And then obviously the scene itself of just kind of the bouncing back and forth between Mon Mothma and Krennic, trading verbal, sparks with each other in this whole scene. And then having Clea and Lonnie just be 20 feet away from them, trying to pull this thing off before anybody notices in the entire room. I thought was great. And the whole, like, her telling him the story and saying, listen to what I'm telling you because we might be tested on this. I thought that all that stuff was really, really cool and fun to watch. Let's see what else. Yeah, this whole Partagaz congratulating Cyril. That was a great moment that the whole, like, do I ruin it if I say that this is the best day of my entire life? Which I thought was really, really funny.
Yeah.
Then we get this with Vel and Cinta meeting back up again. Then we have Luthen listening in on Gorman. And then let's kind of let's dive into this because it becomes a kind of a bigger player later on. How did you feel about this whole little storyline with the two of them in this Coruscant apartment? And like, if we're going to be staying here, can we at least decorate and make it feel like a home? And kind of everything that Bix is dealing with, and now the fallout of not just Ferrix, but also what happened to her with the Imperial officer, and the whole kind of Luthen and Cassian going about it two very different ways, but kind of being like, we need to get Bix her groove back.
Yeah. I mean, this part of the arc is where I agree with Luthen, I guess, per se, where Cassian is so hell-bent on making sure nothing ever happens to her again, and being there every time, where she says it to him, and then I think Luthen probably says it too when he goes to visit him, is that you're not always going to be there, and for this to work, strangely, a lot of this reminded me of Heat, when like De Niro's like, you got to be ready 30 seconds or less to leave everything you got if if there's heat around the corner. And I don't know why, but that always, like, throughout this season, that always played in the back of my mind with a lot of these characters. And I feel like that's where Cassian and Bix, obviously, in the end of the next arc that we're going to talk about, where that goes. And did you think that Luthen was insinuating that she would have to be like maybe killed or something like that? Like when he goes
to Cassian?
Yeah.
Like when they're on the kind of walkway thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Where he's like,
I'm trying to remember
if you don't solve
that.
it, we're going to have to solve,
Oh yeah, exact. Yeah, I'm trying
Yeah.
to remember the exact dialogue, but yes, I think that was. I think it was like, because Cassian's like, she has to be strong, and that's when Luthen's like, you think I don't want her strong? Like
Right.
she's one of our best operators. Which again, talk about it when we get to kind of Bix's character in general. But to me, that's another one of the storylines that I was like, I wish we could have just seen more. That's going to be a recurring theme, I think, when we get to the characters and the season overall. Is like, I just wanted more with
Mhm.
every corner of this world. But yeah, I think that's what he was saying. Is he's like, she needs to either get strong or she's like out, whatever
Yeah.
form that has to take. Um,
I mean, she
which I
he
think is
doesn't even
interesting.
want like he doesn't want to be in public at all. Like they go to the store and she's trying to talk to the store clerk. He's like, stop talking to him.
Yeah,
You know, don't want to be
yeah.
found
It's
out.
like he's like becoming this like turtle shell version of Luthen, where it's
Mhm.
like he's going too hard into that life of just constantly going from mission to mission to mission. And I think that's why, and we're going to talk about the next arc in just a minute here. Um, that arc is the whole Gorman arc is very like, after this, I'm done.
Mhm.
Because it's just he's been running and running and running. He's finally got something good on Yavin. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and jump over. Is there anything else we want to talk about in this arc here?
Um,
Before we start the kind of start
Saw.
of the Gorman front. Right, Saw and Willman, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that all that stuff was great. It felt a little like, now that we've seen the grand scheme of things, it felt a little like, well, Saw's an important player in this,
In the
era,
universe, but not
but
necessarily the
yeah, not
show.
necessarily the show, but we're gonna give him something that also helps us develop Willman a lot.
Right.
And I think that's what it was more about. Is it's like we want to give we want to do two things. We want to bring Forrest Whitaker in as Saw this season,
Mhm.
and we want to really make you care and invested about this character of Willman. Well, let's put Willman with Saw, and that kind of kills
Yeah.
two birds with one stone. That's just kind of the writery way that I think they put it together, but the actual execution I thought was great. I loved seeing Saw and his whole group and his paranoia and stuff. Um, do
Yeah,
you
what'd you think
did
of
you
him, like,
think
shooting that guy?
yeah, I was just gonna say, did you think that that guy was an actual spy, or do you think that Saw is just like crazy? Because I think
I
that Saw is just crazy. Because Two Tubes just goes, "Oh, here it is. He was a spy,"
No, I
and it's
did
like
think he was a
he's
spy at
holding like a
first, and
water
then they
bottle.
were like, "Oh, yeah." I think they say, like, "Oh, he planted it on him." And I was like, "Oh, maybe he wasn't the spy."
Yeah, like
Um,
I think it was just he just grabbed like a notepad out of his pocket
yeah.
or something.
I was also a little confused. Maybe I kind of, like, zoned out a little bit, but I was like, "What do we need this, like, contraption for, like" I just couldn't remember, like, and then I still didn't really understand once we finally got to his kind of speech at the end.
Hmm.
But I did think his speech was very effective,
Yeah,
and made sense. And again, it's just another point of view, as far as the rebellion and the way that these different kind of factions are going about things.
yeah, and I like that at the end of the day that was really just what it was about. It was really
Hmm.
just to provide you with another perspective on how
Hmm.
things are. And I like that you go, well, does that mean that Willman is now part of the partisans and he's with Saw? And it's like, no,
Yeah.
he's just back with
No.
Luthen the next episode. But it's like, it's
Yeah.
just showing that Willman is just, he's in the Cassian mode of
Hmm.
going from mission to mission to mission, not really
Yeah.
caring where he has to be. And then we'll see in the next arc all these visits to Gorman that he was doing and everything. Um, which yeah, I thought was interesting. But also on that, just talking about the Saw arc, one thing I loved in it is everything that we got with Jakar from the sequel trilogy, that planet
Hmm.
that will later become a resistance base. I loved seeing it again here, and then the little joke right at the end with Saw saying, "We're never coming back here." And then it's like,
Hmm.
well, that's 30 years later. That's the only place that you're going to be able to gather when you have to go through all this over again. And then yeah, I liked how they kind of brought in a bunch of different planets from all across the movies to kind of get a new perspective on them in this show. Particularly one in the last arc that was very fun to see again. But let's go ahead and talk about the next arc. Dare I say the big one? This is arc number 3, which is the Gorman massacre, to put it lightly. It's what everything has been building to. So we get basically episode 7 is the real kind of setup, getting everything in place, where Cassian is going back to Gorman with Willman to kind of get everybody out of there, and to try and kind of put a stopper in this and to take out Dedra once and for all, which is kind of Willman's whole point, is that we know she's going to be there. We know where she's staying. We can actually get her. And then Cassian goes, all right, you know what? We'll go if we can just take her out. And then basically wrong place, wrong time. All hell is also breaking loose at the same time. Which also brings us back to Cassian is sent there. And then a Cyril Karn basically is going through. I can't even read my own notes here. Cyril Karn is going through everything with Dedra, where now we are a year later. He clearly is a little more, all over the place with what is going on. He's realizing that tensions are ratcheting up, that he doesn't know what's going on. He feels like he's being kept in the dark about certain things. And then we have Dedra basically giving him that kiss in the hallway, trying to tell him to basically shut up, and to not worry about it. But something still doesn't feel right to Cyril. And then we obviously go into episode 8, which has a peaceful protest on Gorman escalating into what happens, which we will talk all about. And then throughout that, Cassian escaping once the actual Gorman massacre begins, retrieving the damaged KX unit that Sam hit to bring back, which we know will eventually become K2SO. And then obviously the confrontation with Cyril and Cassian that we can talk as in depth about as we'd like. And then episode 9, which is really truly just two things, which is the speech that Mon Mothma gives condemning Emperor Palpatine for what happened on Gorman publicly, and then Cassian going in to get her physically out of the Senate building, out to freedom from Coruscant, where then obviously Star Wars Rebels takes place of getting her from Coruscant all the way back to the rebellion. This is really driving in on, okay, she gives the speech. How the hell is she getting out of there without getting arrested or killed in the first hour? And the answer is Cassian Andor. Which then also gives us our first look at Bail Organa in true fashion with him in the Senate after being slightly teased at Scaldon's party. All right, where do you want to go here? This is obviously one of the probably the biggest arc of the season, but we can kind of jump to any part or anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think this arc is kind of shared between obviously the whole everything on Gorman and the massacre, but also Cyril. I feel like this is also like a really big part of his character.
Yeah.
So like what did you think of everything that happened with him, and did it work? And I guess his relationship with Dedra and how that kind of ended up.
I mean, yeah, I thought that Cyril definitely, probably besides Cassian, and then by extension Mon, I feel like this was kind of Cyril's moment to shine in the entire show. But in terms of the end, I mean, I thought that his slow realization that, he kind of has two realizations, which is right when we join up with him at the 1 year later, we can already tell that he knows that he's being kept in the dark about things, and that his feelings towards the Gorman people, and towards Gorman as a planet, is changing. And I think that you can see that unrest within him, and that Dedra is not giving him answers, which is making him even more suspicious. And then to just see all of it completely crack and break when he goes in to see her, he gets told to wait in that room. He sees the KX
that was
droids.
very interesting.
Yeah, he sees. I think it was interesting to show that, like, he sees the KX droids in there, and it's just another thing to know, like, whatever is happening here, it's much worse and much bigger than he ever thought. And I think that seeing all of that just break in his face when he sees, when he comes out of that building, and then he sees the reporters just feeding the same propaganda that he has been feeding that the news has been feeding his mother and that has been going on, and him just seeing it all happen in real time. And then also that terrible guy with the black suit with the scar that was there, that was like the guy actually orchestrating the operation.
Yeah.
And everything with the whole like because there's in the comics and in the books and stuff, they talk about this whole how there's this whole network of culpability in the Empire that like the uh what am I trying to say? Yeah, like the culpability is spread out amongst a whole bunch of people. So it's like everyone shares guilt in the Empire, where it's like because so many people have to sign off on things, and I liked they brought that in with the whole like, don't get it twisted, Dedra. Like, I'm planning this operation, but it's still you that has to pull the trigger at the end of the
Right.
day.
Yeah.
And AKA, you have to, meaning you don't really have a choice,
Mhm.
whether you want to or not. That being said, I don't know if Dedra does want to kill all those people in the moment. I don't think she does, because when she's confronted with the real fact of what is happening, I think that's when it's like her brain kicks in. But the problem is everything leading up to that, she's more than happy to get everybody out of her way if it means that she gets a promotion, or if it means that she gets a, attaboy from Partagaz or even from Krennic. But when she's faced with the reality of doing it to real people, I think that's where it finally starts to get to her, and you see her have that like panic attack after she realizes that, well, what happens to Cyril, and the fact that all of this was her idea. It started with her just recommending this idea to Krennic, and now this is the real, result of it, is all of these people dying and all of this death around her. And to see Cyril's breakdown in the middle of all of that, to then have this moment of shell shock, that you then look and the first thing that you see is this person who has defined your life for the past 3 years in Cassian, and he just has nothing left to holding him together, and he just completely snaps and just goes after him physically. I thought the fight was great.
Same. Yep.
I thought it was like believable that these two people would just be an absolute like scrap fest. Um and then obviously the moment of like, who are you, was fantastic. And then him getting taken out by the elder Gorman guy, I thought was just really, really good as well, and a great end to his character. And then it did just remind me too of the what did you think about, you can touch on any of that stuff,
Oh,
but also
sad.
what did you think about the like force healer
Oh
that
yeah.
gave that whole thing, because she says to Cassian, she goes, who are you? And that's the same thing he says to Cyril. With the whole like, you've been, she feels his shoulder, and she's like, you've been gathering all the people that you've been gathering along the way. You're on a path to be to do something greater than yourself, and everything you've done and all the pain that you've had along the way, it's all leading to something in this very big moment, that obviously informs Bix's decision to leave at the end of this arc, which then when we talk about the very end of the show, I think we'll talk about that. But I definitely want to hold off on spoilers for the fourth arc until we get there. But what did you think about all that stuff with, specifically everything going on in the plaza, and then also jumping forward to Mon Mothma, or jumping back to Yavin and the Force Healer and Bix and everything?
Yeah, I thought seeing Cyril like you said, walk in, like I thought everything was played great throughout 3 episodes, him kind of slowly, I would say, I guess I don't want to say switching sides, because he never really fully does that, but kind of having the realization of what is happening and what is going to happen, and confronting Deidre on that. I thought when he walked in that room, I thought he might die, honestly, in that moment, because I was like, they're and very intimidating as well. I thought, with the droids in there, obviously, and then it seems to be some scattered kind of local people as well in that room as well. So I didn't know if that was like
I
some
think it
sort of
was
like,
other people like Cyril, because they
oh,
go,
okay.
any Imperial employee are being
Okay.
told to meet at the headquarters. So I think it was like maybe like an Imperial accountant, and like, just
Yeah.
other people from the kind of the offices.
Right.
Whereas like Cyril's not like a member of the Imperial military, but he's still a member of the Empire,
Right.
or worker of the Empire.
Yeah, I thought that, like you said, the main kind of guy who's kind of running the show and organizing the troops, I would say, having that
Man, he was
conversation
fucking
with
spooky,
Deidre,
man. Yeah.
saying like, this is still your show. I'm still and I think Partagas says the same thing, because at first she's like, why is this guy coming? I can handle this on my own. I don't need this guy. But when he's like, listen, you tell us when to go and we're gonna go.
Yeah, because I think Partagas he goes like, he's handling the troops, but it's still your operation.
Right.
And I like the way that they talk about. I liked, oh man, all of the writing with all this stuff. Another person who I'm just gonna say his name, not really involved with a specific arc, but is Hirt, at the ISB, who was Dedra's assistant in the first season. Figure we should bring him up because he has minimal parts in these things, but he has that big kind of scene with him, Lonnie, and Partagas with the whole like, right away, sir. Yeah, thank you. And he's like, really? It's an assignment. Calibrate your enthusiasm. Like I thought that stuff was just fantastic. But yeah, even Partagas is like already at this point kind of getting sick of Dedra's outlook on things, I guess, let's say. But yeah, I thought all that stuff was great. But yeah, continue going.
And I really liked how it was all kind of set up, where it was like, we're gonna have these, obviously we're gonna have the guards kind of walk out, where he's like, oh, I want a clear path to the I don't even know what it was called. It's not like it's the
like monument.
The monument. And at first when he said that, I'm like, there's a clear path right there. I was like, there's nobody blocking it. There's literally fences. And then they have the guys with the riot gear walk out, and then they have the sniper obviously shoot one of the riot gear guys, and then it all pops off. I'm like, oh my, like this is just like, it was just unbelievable. And again, it kind of like, it's not something that looking at our our current state of affairs in the world that we live in is not, out of the realm of possibility. And I thought it all worked really well. I'm trying to think. And like you said, Cassian and Cyril having their battle, I thought was really awesome, where he kind of just, he loses it. And even just how harrowing it also got, as like, all the protesters are kind of pinned into this area. Yeah. And then you see kind of, you see the openings a little bit, where I think there's some stairs on this one side and there's another opening over here. And then the stormtroopers just kind of close those. And it's just this kind of like, this collapsing kind of hole where everybody is just,
Yeah. And you see Cyril and Cassian look around and see that they're letting everybody in. They're opening the plaza, but they're not letting anybody back out.
The droids, like when they come out,
oh dude, when the KX droids, boom, man. The one girl, who was Rylance's daughter, like the kind of the main one, who the very first meeting with Cassian, the night he comes to Gorman in episode 4, where he's like, you can't just walk up to me like that. I could have been anybody. You could have just risked the whole operation. When the KX unit, which I'm going to hope and say to myself that wasn't K2. He was doing crowd control down in the lower streets. Yeah. But when that KX unit kicks her and she just flies, and you hear her like spine snap when she falls, and it's just like in the camera, and it just holds there. I'm like, what the hell? And then her kind of boyfriend or whoever that was, who got, which is something we don't normally see in Star Wars. Normally in Star Wars, you get shot with a blaster, you're done. He gets like shot in the gut, and he like survives for a little bit, and then ends up dying in the arms of the older guy. And then the saddest truth of it all is, even if they didn't die in the massacre, their planet is still being completely destroyed. Right. So they're going to be moved off planet, or moved into, basically locking up the entire, city, or the entire residential population of the planet, or locking up or relocating, basically Gorman internment camps. Like, oh wow, there you go. Remember when I said Remember when I said when we went live they didn't have that thing?
Oh yeah.
The Passion of Andor 40 minutes ago. They have all these. They drop these for every single episode, where it shows all of the different outfits for everybody. Oh man, I gotta get that. That's frame worthy right there. What a hero. I like that his name is Leo Partagas, but it's Leo with an I. All right. Anything else on? Well, let's talk about the Senate. Let's talk about episode 9 in detail. Everything going on with Mon Mothma. We get this incredible scene with her where you find out that Bail's team, Bail Organa, that is his extraction team, is compromised. A great back and forth with the two of them in this scene, where he grabs her arm and she's like, "Don't you dare!"
Yeah,
and then a very good back and forth with what you were talking about earlier with the whole like, "Oh, I get it. I trust no one but you. Where would we be without you, Luthen?" And I just think that again, and I'm still going to personally hold off until we talk about the conversation, but I want to hear whatever you want to say about Luthen. Which again, I think just leads to what I love that they did with this season about Luthen's character. But go ahead, let's talk about the start of this Senate stuff, and then we'll get into Bail and the actual speech in a minute.
Yeah, I will say, like, I think one thing I noticed specifically in that episode, I think late in the next arc, maybe just in this episode, where he was getting more and more just kind of trying to think of what the word is. But like he wasn't like in that scene, he's not putting the wig on, he's not putting on the whole thing where it's like, oh, I'm the guy that runs the consignment shop with all the artifacts.
Yeah,
he's
a little too like brash.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Which I
too
thought
bold.
was interesting. Yeah, which I thought was interesting in that moment. Specifically in that screenshot you just showed, there's literally stormtroopers right behind him.
That is true. That is true, actually.
So I did think that was interesting. But again, this is one of those moments where it's like, granted, he needs her because they need the funding, obviously.
Yeah.
But he's also, he's looking out for her, which I have to be like,
Yeah,
okay,
and also not
so
just
bad.
the funding too, but in this, it's like he's looking out for her. She's the face.
Right.
And he knows that people like Ezra and people like Hera, they already see Mon Mothma as a face of the resistance, let's say. But he knows tomorrow is the day that she becomes the face of the rebellion, the capital R rebellion.
Yeah.
And he's like, that to me is more important than any of the money, is that you are about to take on this mantle of leadership and you don't understand how dangerous this is. People already know about this. They're already plotting against you to keep you from reaching this goal. I'm here. I'm going to have somebody on the ground who is going to get you out of there that you can trust. And I love the whole, I have friends everywhere thing. And then I love this scene, which was with Bail Organa, who we can kind of dive into the recast here if you want to give him his kind of own moment here. Obviously, we have Benjamin Bratt playing Bail Organa here instead of Jimmy Smits, who has been playing him since 2002, Attack of the Clones. Obviously, for me, I mean, if you've watched this show long enough, or just hear me talk or know me personally, Bail Organa is like top 3 Star Wars character for me. I just love him. And specifically, I love Jimmy Smits, who has played him and always played him, even in the animated shows and everything like that. So it was a big hit when this first happened. Oh my God, Benjamin Bratt, who, I like him. I'm a big Jonathan Pangborn fan, from the MCU, obviously one of the best characters, in that whole franchise. But, it took me out of the episode for a second, but I love that Tony Gilroy said, we put him at the end of episode, what was that? The end of episode 6 for the reason to be like, yes, he's here. Get used to it. Next week, he's getting to work. We gotta have you believe that this guy is Bail Organa, and you can't be caught up in where's Jimmy Smits for 3 hours. And so that leads us to this scene, which I thought was great, and the scene before it, where you see the Gorman senator being arrested and screaming, right as he goes past Bail, "It's my people today. It'll be your people next."
Yeah.
Which, works on so many levels, but obviously the deepest one is that quite literally what happened on Gorman was but an appetizer to Alderaan, which is just going to be, they didn't need a mineral, they didn't want the people, they didn't need anything, they just wanted to make an example. And this, I mean, honestly, long story short, I love Benjamin Bratt as Bail Organa. I think that every scene he was in, I think he knocked it out of the park. And I honestly, one of the most emotional moments that I had throughout the whole season was the whole thing, which I saw somebody on Blue Sky reference in season 1 when Marva says, "But just this time, I can't go and you can't stay," when talking to Cassian. And their big split where it's the last time that he sees Marva before she passes. I loved this scene with Bail and Mon when he's like, she's like, "What are you talking about? This is everything we've been doing." He's like, "You don't understand. It's not that. It's not that I don't support this. It's I can't go with you. It's someone has to stay here. Otherwise, it's all lost." You know what I mean? It's like I have to stick it out even longer because I have to keep my daughter safe. And I love that they don't even toe the line of him going like, "I have to stay for Leia."
Yeah. Oh, my daughter, Leia.
Because if you're a fan, this is my daughter, Miss Marvel. Yeah. Even if you're a fan, you know that he's saying it without saying it. You're like, well, why does he have to stay? Because of his family. It's like they will murder her. You got to remember that at this point, this is post, like Leia's already in the Junior Senate. Leia is on Coruscant with him, going back to Alderaan. They are commuting. This is like deep book stuff, but like this is what informs their relationship. Is like Leia and him during this time, since she would be 18 in this episode. So for the age of 16, 17, and 18, they were commuting back and forth every week with each other, going to the Junior Senate and him going to the regular Senate, all over the place. And then also at this point, she had already found out that he was making stops to Crate, because before they established Yavin, they had Crate as a base for the planet from The Last Jedi. So that was the planet that the rebel base was at that time, which is about a year before this. So like to him, it's not just him that's in this, it's his daughter is fully in this. She has already met the Ghost Crew and Ezra and done a mission with them. Like Leia is in this for the long haul. And I loved his whole thing about I have to stay and what that leads to. And that it's like, yeah, him staying, he could have gotten out. He could have been on Yavin when Alderaan blew up, but he was home. Because he wanted to keep that brave face of Alderaan, and that like this guy is a proud, member of the royal family of Alderaan, and that him and his wife are going to stay on planet and not do what Mothma is. But it doesn't lessen what Mothma did. He's like, we are both doing two incredibly strong things. And my strong thing is, I think there's even a line in there that I can't remember, but I think either him or her says like, I don't know what's harder, me going or you staying. And I just thought that like got me really emotional. That's when I knew that I was like, okay, I could buy this guy as Bail Organa. And then we get this incredible scene where he kind of less emotional, but just more a badass. But and then it gets the great line in that other scene, tear the shit out of this place, which is a great last line. But then in the actual Senate chamber, he does this great thing where they're like, the schedule's locked. We're not letting any of them speak. But a slightly moderate senator throws it over to him. And then he uses Imperial doctrine itself to then throw it over to Mon Mothma. And I love that whole dialogue where he's like, 17-252.
Yeah.
Clearly it's that if it's an emergency. And then he goes, and we heard the senator earlier say repeatedly how big of an emergency this is. So let's go ahead and throw it over to Senator Mon Mothma. Like I love all that stuff, that it's like it shows that he's going to stay and continue to fight it through the system. And I thought that was great. But let's get to the main event here, Mon Mothma's speech, and then the escape. Anything else you want to talk about that? The speech itself, calling out the genocide of the Gorman people. just the structure of the writing in general of the speech, I thought was absolutely beautiful, insane, incredible, whatever you want to say. But the whole, like, the monster that we've all helped create, the monster that will come for us all in the end, is Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah,
and
name
then
drop.
boom, I know. It was crazy.
No, yeah, I thought everything leading up to the speech, I thought that was all great. And like you said, just kind of putting out there what is actually going on, and not being afraid of, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure that character is afraid in that moment, but speaking the truth of what needs to be said. And then I also just would like to say, I thought the kind of post speech, I thought the kind of getaway that was also really well done. Kind of the race for both these two sides to grab her, and then obviously Cassian gets there first. And the I thought the shooting of the driver was, I don't know if it was supposed to be funny, but it was very funny.
I think it was definitely supposed to be like a moment of levity. Yeah.
Yeah. and people freeze framing on
Genevieve
O'Reilly's
yeah.
face of her, so the character's surprise, I thought was really great. One thing I will say, who should have been leading the Senate in that moment was Mas Ameda. He should.
Yes,
I would have popped for that one. I would have popped.
It's so funny because I know, like, we've just over the years, I know you bring that character up all the time, like in the way that I bring up like Bib Fortuna or something.
Yeah.
And I have thought that all season when the credits, I mean, obviously visually I knew that it was not him, but when the captions came up and it just said like Oath Keeper was reading the oath, I was like, Oath Keeper, where's Sly Moore? Where's Masamita? What the hell's going on here? Telling me about an Oath Keeper. But no, yeah, that was fantastic. I just want to pull up these two here. Oh, that's very bad quality, but that one, and that one, fantastic. But yeah, unironically though, her transition here in this scene of them running, going from the Mon Mothma with the blue jacket that we were very familiar with the nice coiffed, combed back hair, to losing the jacket, putting on Cassian's, her hair is falling down on her face. Like they roughed her up in that in the escape, and it was very believable. And I liked that people were like, because in Rebels she's playing Ken Knapsack on Force Center made a great point that was like, because people are like, oh, she's so different in Rebels, like when she gives the speech in Rebels, and it's like, in that show they were portraying Return of the Jedi Mon Mothma as younger. This show, Andor, has always been portraying Revenge of the Sith Mon Mothma right before, it's like it's two different versions of the character, even though the same actress played her in both. It's two different tones of show, and it's two different tones of writing. So it's gonna sound different, and it's gonna be different. But I think it's one of the strengths of Star Wars that somebody like Genevieve O'Reilly can play a character when she's 20 years old, then play it again in a cartoon when she's 30, then play it again in live action when she's 45. I think that all that's great. And I also love, spoiler alert for the Star Wars original trilogy, but I also love that everybody, like all the TikToks that are like, the cast, what's it gonna mean to say goodbye to this? And everybody's like, I mean, it's a part of my life and stuff. And Genevieve O'Reilly's like, yeah, this chapter closing is really, it's like she's gonna get to keep playing her, man. She was in Ahsoka. You're telling me they're not gonna have her in that movie? Are you kidding me? She's a Star Wars superstar after Andor. Like, you thought that her scenes in Ahsoka were good. She's gonna be giving another Senate speech about Thrawn on the big screen. I think that's totally coming next. Like the fact that the idea that Star Wars would be done with Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma when there is so much coming in the whole what's it called? The whole Imperial Remnant Thrawn era, the whole Mandoverse. They're going to put Genevieve O'Reilly in everything that she'll agree to do. And it's like, I would say, well, if the script isn't as strong as Andor, maybe she won't do it. She was in 2 episodes of Ahsoka already. So it's like, I think she's perfectly fine. quote unquote slumming it with Dave Filoni's screenwriting. So I think that'll be more than fine. But yeah, I am so glad that she just has gotten so many opportunities to play this character at different ages and different angles and different ways and different mediums and animation and in live action television and in PG-13 live action television. It's in these deleted scenes under the writing and direction of George Lucas. And then with these people like Dave Filoni, like Henry, oh my God, what's his name? Henry. Why am I? It's not Henry. Oh, it is Henry Gilroy. Unrelated, but Henry Gilroy, who wrote this stuff in Rebels, then Tony and Dan Gilroy, who wrote the stuff in Andor, and then obviously Filoni again with Ahsoka. I'm just really, really probably, it's obvious to say, but after the show's done, I'll remember a lot of the characters, but Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen, Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon, and then obviously Diego Luna as Cassian are just like they feel like flesh, they feel like real people that I can reach out and touch and they would be real. And I could know what having a conversation with them would be like. They feel that real to me. And that's not to say that any of the other characters were like given the short end of the stick. It's just when you have so much put into those three characters that you really just feel them as people. And I'll even throw in, to a lesser extent, but Clea this season, she really got a lot of development and a lot of play, a lot more than she did in the first season. And obviously, going to these next 4 episodes, which we're going to get to right now, Clea plays a huge part in these next 3 episodes. And honestly, a huge part in Star Wars, because without Clea and without Luthen and without Lonnie, which I can already tell by a comment you made earlier, we're definitely going to talk about Lonnie and the scene with Luthen. But without Lonnie, Luthen, and Clea, none of this shit goes anywhere and everybody dies.
Right.
And you know who they didn't toast in Vel and Cassian's little speech was like people like Lonnie. Because nobody's ever going to know what Lonnie did for years. For what was it? In season 1, he had already said 6 years. So for a decade of being undercover in the ISB, to give it all up, and it's what Luthen says in season 1. Wouldn't you rather give it all up all at once for something you really believed in? And that's exactly what, happens to Lonnie. And it's exactly what Luthen does. So if anyone has not seen...
Before we get there, we got to talk about the whole Bix and Cassie at the end of the
episode. Absolutely, yeah, that's true. So obviously, Mon Mothma is safe. And then they have another great interaction with the apartment on Coruscant that we'll go back to again, where they kind of use as a halfway house before Gold Squadron comes and gets her. Then Cassian goes home to Yavin, where he meets up with Bix, who is very, I would say, like solemn and very quiet, and just kind of talking to him. And he's like, after this, before that, even there's the scene with Clea where he goes, "I'm done after this." Yeah. And she goes, "Oh, you're done." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to make my own choices." And she goes, "I thought that's what we were all fighting for, was the ability to make our own choices."
I think even Vel talks to Bix,
I believe. Yes. Yeah. Where she goes, Vel has the great line where she goes, "Bix, we're not Luthen's puppets anymore. Like we're here on Yavin, like things are different, like all this stuff." And it's still just, there's something up with Bix that we'll talk about at the end of everything. But I do think it's very interesting. But let's talk about what did you think about that? About Bix leaving him the message, him running. I thought that was, first of all, I don't want to spoil the final episode yet, but I'll call back to a lot of this ending in the next part. But I loved him running, from their hut all the way up to kind of the landing pad for the ships and everything like that, and then leading into K2 being brought back online. But I loved her speech with the whole, like, I'm not brave enough to do this to your face because I know you'd make me change my mind.
Right.
So I'm doing the bravest thing I can, which is I'm making this decision for both of us.
Mhm.
I mean, that shit was like, that shit had me in tears. I was
Yeah, it
like,
was
that was
yeah.
like crazy.
Obviously very sad in the moment.
Yeah.
I think everybody kind of rooting for that relationship throughout the show. But it, in the grand scheme of things, it makes sense, kind of going back as well to the Force healer, where
Yep.
she's like, I feel there's something in you and you're kind of meant for something bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And
And then
we
the
talked
Force
about
healer
it.
trying to make Bix feel better by going, maybe it is you.
Yeah.
And
And
Bix knowing it isn't.
yeah, and kind of going back to I think it was either the second arc
Mm-hmm.
where Luthen's like, listen, I need Bix. She needs to be,
She needs
we
to be
need Bix
strong.
at her best.
Mm-hmm.
She can't be, moping around over not, I shouldn't say moping, but she she should I need her to deal with the things she needs to deal with, and then come be a part of this and not have you trying to,
Make
be her
decisions for
shadow
her. Yeah.
and save her and all this other stuff. And then in the end, she kind of makes that decision because I don't think Cassian will ever, I don't think he would ever stop doing that. I think that
Mm-hmm.
they were kind of stuck in this kind of circle where he would just constantly be, because he was so afraid of losing her, he would just constantly be around her and making
Mm-hmm.
sure she was safe. And,
He
when
could
you're
never fully dedicate himself
to the
while still
yeah,
having to keep
right.
one eye on her constantly.
Right. So, seeing, and obviously, like you said, seeing the end of the entire show, I feel like that decision makes sense. It is warranted.
Yes.
And we'll talk. Well, never mind.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it when we get to the end of the show. But I thought that was all great. I thought that all worked perfectly.
Yeah. I will say for me, it worked even better after.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's talk about, and then we have the fun little scene of K2 coming online with the whole if I've offended you, I'm sorry, but if not, can you please point that somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a
Right.
funny line.
I did like sorry, real quick. I did
yeah.
like how they were kind of putting that together. It's like, oh, here's the team, that we
Mhm.
got Kate. The guy who kind of raised his hand and was like, "That's my gun."
Melshi, yeah.
Is he in the movie?
Yeah, he's in
Okay.
Rogue One. He's the one that actually goes and gets Jin with K2 because it isn't Cassian.
I think I'm gonna watch it after this, so that's why I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm like that. Okay, I was like, he's clearly in.
Yeah.
I was like, he's clearly part of the crew.
Yeah, he was also in season 1 because he was
okay.
in Narkina. He's the one that
Gotcha.
he escapes with.
Oh, okay.
Who's on his team.
Got it.
He just looked different in that because he was like clean shaven with like short long hair, and in this obviously he's got like a goatee and a shaved head. So I think it's just to match his Rogue One look.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he definitely looked different for sure. But yeah, I love that little touch too, that little scene with Vel and him where she recognizes the gun from the Aldani heist, and that's the gun that Cassian gave Melshi. So it was a nice little callback moment there. All right, so if anybody has not seen the final arc of Andor that came out last night, come back to the video, check out like probably the last 15 minutes 20 minutes here. We are going to get into all of it because I do feel like less happened in this arc than the Gorman arc, but I felt like I had a moment halfway through episode 11 where I was like, oh, this is like going to end really soon now. And I was like, is a lot happening? Like, we haven't even seen Mon Mothma yet. And then I was like, man, you just got to let this show go because you just got to let the show, ride, because I thought they ended it great. I thought it came out. They brought everything to such a satisfying end. And I think looking back on these 3 episodes, the thing that really stands out that differentiates it as the finale is I actually think in a way they chose to take their foot off the gas for the first time in this entire show. Like particularly this season, particularly 4 through 9 were so dense. It was such a just boom, boom, understand this dynamic, this character, this people, this area of Gorman, this thing, this bellhop, this thing that Cyril's dealing with, this thing that Partagast feels about what Legret is saying to Lonnie. And you're like, whoa, like,
yeah,
this, I feel like went, okay, we have done, 21 episodes of setting up dominoes. They're about to start falling. Like, I feel like that's what, boom, boom, boom. Whether it's, again, full spoilers here for the finale of all of Andor. We are going to launch into everything and cover everything. I'm going to go into like a breakdown of it, but just from the top of my head, because this one I don't have to look at the notes so much because it just happened last night. Right away, boom, Dedra at the antique shop right away. He's meeting with Lonnie. Again, I like that you brought up that he was in dark mode Luthen when he met with Mon. And then in that same plaza, went and met with Lonnie as the shopkeeper.
Yeah.
So it was just very interesting. And I love that very first opening scene where it hasn't really clicked with you yet that this is just going to be a Luthen and Clea episode, but you're just like, man, I love that we're staying with these guys. This is great. Where she goes, I think anything less than perfect is gonna, this isn't gonna work. And he just smiles at her and goes, Clea, I think we ran out of perfect a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, and then just right from there, it's just like a fucking collapsing house of cards that it's all, everything is coming undone. I mean, honestly, do you even want me to go through it? I feel like we could just do this like we do a normal thing and just talk about it. Like, where do you want to immediately gravitate to?
I think we could probably go just episode to episode real quick. I will say, I think this was probably my favorite episode, honestly,
of the entire show.
Yeah. I mean, or at least this season,
I think, and it's interesting because it spans 2 arcs. I think that 9 and 10 for me are the strongest 2 episodes of everything. And Cassian is not even in one of them.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah, I mean, what I was referring to earlier, obviously Luthen kind of you said Lonnie's his name?
Lonnie Young.
Meeting Lonnie, obviously they're kind of playing this cat and fish or cat and mouse game of like, give me the information, but I need this if I'm going to give you the information. And Lonnie is clearly like tired. He's clearly like, I've been doing this for.
He was tired 5 years ago in season 1.
I've been doing this for a decade. I'm in constant stress, and I
have a young son.
I have a young son. Yeah. My family, they're hidden away right now, but they're gonna be. They can't stay there forever. We gotta.
Yeah, they're hidden away on Coruscant. Like we need to get out of here.
And in this moment, Luthen he ends up being willing, where he's like, "Yeah, I'll take you. I'll take you to safety, but you got to tell me what's the weapon, what's the deal." And then when he tells him, and then he kills him, and I was like, I like you, but you can't do that. Like you just, and I get it. It's kind of like one of those like loose, we got to tie up all the strings. It's like we can't have a loose thread hanging out somewhere where you just told me this information that is very, very sensitive. Like nobody knows. And, you are going to be traced back. Like when they find out it's you, how do I know you're not going to, squeal on me? So I gotta take you out. And it's one of those things I'm like, oh my God. It's like you mother, I hate that you just did this. And then I thought going through the rest of the episode, obviously, Dedra kind of shows up at the what's it called?
The shop.
And
man, when she takes out, because I'm rewatching season 1 right now. When she takes out the Star Path unit from season 1, I was like, I literally was like, I screamed at my TV, like literally.
And then him kind of trying to destroy the evidence, I thought was great. Him like dumping whatever the liquid is on. And then kind of just seeing him and Clea's relationship, I also thought was really, really interesting. Something
I never thought this show would go into.
Yeah, I'm glad
until it happened. I am so glad. I was like, oh, it's just not that type of show.
Right.
And then turns out it's exactly that type of show. And these flashbacks are some of the most important information
Yeah.
we're getting about the show in its
Honestly,
entirety.
when they were showing kind of how they met, like on that ship, it looked like during obviously a battle.
Yeah.
And then some later on, like uh obviously I don't know what planet they're on, but when Clea watches that like execution, I was like, oh, that's when she was like, I was like, that's when she was radicalized.
Yeah.
I was like, she's just staring down this execution.
As you're talking about this, I'm like dying to
Yeah.
be done with this show to go watch the
But
episode again.
I in my head, I was like, I mean, if they wanted to make like a spin-off like miniseries on this, I would watch that. Just
Yeah.
like the two of them.
Or even just what Clea was doing throughout the original trilogy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then obviously everything that takes place in the hospital and her, doing what needs to be done. And I think that's something that that's what he would have wanted, obviously. Like, I don't think he wants to, I mean, he tried to kill himself before they took him to the hospital. So it's like,
Yeah.
he doesn't want to go through obviously the torture of it, I don't think he would obviously give up anything if they were to torture him, but just kind of making it easier on him, I guess. Just
Yeah, like I
decision
think
for
that
him.
Clea's like idea there was, well, all right. Let me just say this too, because I want to go back to your Lonnie thing.
Mhm.
I think I'm just trying to find this image here, which it is not letting me. 1 second. Perfect. Bear with me, everybody. There's so much in the show I want to talk about it. It's just a visual medium. Boom. All right. I don't take this, and we're gonna hit on the characters, but we've been hitting on it a lot, so that I think that segment's gonna be a little shorter. But to me, I am very team Luthen. I think this guy makes mistakes. I think he doesn't do everything perfectly, but like this, I don't. And you're totally right to see it that way. And I see so many people say that, and I get it. I take this as soon as he told him that she's looking to put together a team for an operation on Coruscant to go get him, Luthen already knows that he's like, all right, it's done. Today is the final day. Like, we're done. I think it's, if he doesn't kill Lon, I don't think it's, okay, I'm taking care of a loose end. I think he knows no matter what he does, he can't get Lonnie off planet. I think he kills Lonnie because I think he kills Lonnie for the same reason that Clea kills Luthen. You know what I mean? I think it's a mercy killing of, you are going to be tortured for the rest of your life, however long that might be. And like you just said, I don't think Luthen's going to give up information. I don't think Lonnie would even give up information. Not that Lonnie really even has information to give up other than Luthen, which they already know about. I think it is, I'm killing this person to end them in a peaceful way that's just quick and over with, because I'm about to kill myself. I think he already knows that in this meeting with Lonnie. And I think that colors that for me. And then I think, what was the other thing? What was the other thing that we were just talking about before that? About what Luthen did. I cannot remember. I think it had something to do with Partagas. I just completely lost my train of thought. But yeah, I just thought everything in here is really, really, really good. And we were talking about, what the hell were we just talking about? I just got so wrapped up in that. But anyways, let's talk about this. Right, we were talking about Luthen and Clea just in general, and about it being, a great story. But yeah, let's just talk more about that, with Dedra then getting arrested in the hospital, with Clea coming in to basically pull the plug on Luthen so that he wouldn't have to talk. Which, by the way, what is that? Look at his ears.
I don't know.
Because did he stab his gut, or did he stab?
No, he stabbed his gut.
Okay.
Something I did want to say specifically this arc, that just applause to prop people, the production design. I
Yeah.
thought everything looked really, really just cool.
Yeah.
Like just like the
They nailed Coruscant. Like just you know who they really need to keep on in Star
Mhm.
Wars? Everybody goes, "Oh, they need to keep Tony Gilroy on. They need to keep Tony Gilroy on." They need to keep his name is escaping me, but he's like this like 28-year-old the production designer that he
Mhm.
got from Chernobyl.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he needs to stay. He needs to be a new Doug Chang where he just has a permanent home at Lucasfilm
Yeah.
to develop the look of Star Wars
Right.
locations and
Like
Star Wars
the
sets.
interface that they would use to kind of communicate, I thought was really cool. Like the
Yeah.
hospital, that the thing that was keeping him alive, like the big apparatus on the ceiling, and like
Yeah, I love that the nurse
pumping the
goes,
oxygen.
"This room is the only thing keeping him alive."
Right. I thought that was all just really, really cool. And yeah, like you said, everything that kind of happens, and how I thought it did a really good tie-in between, obviously going back in time, showing us the relationship, but also like kind of the blowing up of the patrol cruisers, whatever you want to call them, and how that kind of moves into the future. Which, quite honestly, I didn't really understand how that worked, but maybe they explained it at one point. I just missed it.
Wait, which what part?
How she kind of like is able to blow them all up.
I think the idea is that she when she gets there, she does look at she looks at them when she's first eyeing up the hospitals. I think the
Mhm.
idea is that she planted all the charges like
Oh, okay.
before she came up into the
Yeah.
hospital.
But also I thought, just real quick, I thought another great scene between the two of them was Luthen and Clea, young Clea, when they're sitting.
When they're in
Wait,
Naboo?
was it Naboo? Okay, I was
Yeah,
like,
it
that
was,
looked
yeah.
like Naboo.
It was even the same filming location.
Oh, wow.
Like they went back there to film at the exact same bridge from Attack of the Clones,
Mhm.
which is like crazy.
But the conversation between them, and how she, at a young age, would seemed very willing to kind of, blow up that bridge, or blow the trucks on the bridge, and him kind of being like, it's like, I don't think you understand like what we're doing. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if we're gonna do this, you got to be sure, and then you got to live with it. And then also like that, I felt like he kind of plays into this as well, just throughout the entire show, like the timing of these types of things, where, and I think he kind of says it at the when she's watching the group of people get gunned down in broad daylight, where he like walks away.
Yeah.
And he's like, now's not the time. This is terrible. And harness what you feel right now, so that when the time does come, you're ready. But now is not the time to show any fight, really.
Yeah, and I love that his whole little section of his speech on, she goes, "When do we start like winning?" And he goes, "We don't. We're going to
Right.
lose over and over and over again."
Yeah.
But eventually someone will win because of what we do. And it's kind of the kid gloves version of his, I burn my life for a sunrise I'll never see. It's like him starting to get that mentality. And I liked that they showed that it's like he didn't know what he was going to do with his life, but he knew it wasn't going to be, as a soldier. Like he wasn't going to fight for that. I like to think it's not filled in, and I think that this show, it's funny because it pays such respect and diligence to canon and stuff. But I do think when it comes to like what was Republic, what was Separatist, what was Empire, it's always kind of been wishy-washy, because like even in season 1 when they're on Canary, and Marva calls the Separatist officers Republic officers, and then it was kind of the same in this, where it's like I feel like they're trying to say that he like was in the Imperial Army, but like that doesn't quite work timeline wise,
right?
So I like to, at this point I'm choosing to believe that he
That's
was
what I was
probably
asking you last night.
Yeah.
I was like, what was that battle? I was like, was he? That's why
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, that looks interesting.
Yeah, I'm choosing to believe because the Republic definitely was not the Republic was definitely not executing civilians in any campaigns during the Clone Wars. I can promise you that. I would be surprised if the Separatists were killing civilians during the Clone Wars, but I mean, it's more probable than the Republic. So I'm going to guess that he was probably in the Separatist army as just a non-battle droid, like in some actual human soldier troop.
Right.
And obviously was not a fan of what they do. But then also he goes in the speech to Lonnie in season 1, in the sacrifice speech. He does say, I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago, which is the dawn of the Empire. So it's like, I feel like they're kind of playing it fast and loose, but it's Clone Wars era for sure. Whatever he was doing out there. But and I like that again, it adds another wrinkle that it's like maybe Luthen didn't kill them himself, but it's like the same way that Marva took Cassian from Kenari, Luthen took Kleia from her home planet. So it's like, were her parents alive? Were they killed? Did Luthen kill her parents? Either way, Luthen was a part of the group that killed her parents. And then Luthen himself took her out and away from this planet. So I like that it kind of mirrored Marva and Cassian's relationship with Kleia and Luthen. And I like that they kind of gave a little hint to like the origin of his name, that his real name was Captain or Sergeant Lear, and then Lear backwards is Rail. So I liked that. That was interesting. I wonder if his name was still Luthen or if it was something else. But yeah, I thought all that stuff was fantastic. All the flashbacks filling in everything. And then we get to the next episode, which is her reaching out on the radio, which Willman finds, goes on the trip back one last time to the same Coruscant apartment. Another thing, the show does have beautiful big sets, but it reuses them a lot in very smart ways. Super smart that every single arc, almost every arc, had a reason to go back to that Coruscant set, which I thought was great, that it was like them living there, them escaping with Mon Mothma, and then them shooting it to hell. As like one final place. And then I like that Cassian had that moment where he looked back at the apartment, because he's like, at this point, I've had so many memories there. And it's like, now we're leaving with Kleia. She's unconscious. All these Imperials are dead in there. RIP here to getting used as a human shield by K2SO.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that was that was crazy that he was just holding him up, like ragdolling him.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we get into that where they're going to escape with Kleia, and then that's a lot of episode 11. And then episode 12 is kind of 10 or so minutes of action at the beginning of it, with like wrapping everything up. And then it's basically my favorite thing about the show, which is this episode turns into this scene, which is one of the best scenes of the entire show.
You drive me insane.
Yeah. The two by Bale. Yeah, they've been driving me crazy since Rogue One, man. Like I loved that Cassian, like this guy in particular, the guy in the back who was the one in Rogue One that was like a Death Star, like like he was that guy in Rogue One. And I love that he has the moment where he's like, Luthen Rail, and he like laughs to himself, and Cassian's like, shut the fuck up. He's like, how dare you? Like this, I just risked my life to go save this guy who I haven't always agreed with, but who oh my God, I want like all the dialogue to just be in my brain already. But it's like, he has given, a guy who none of us would be here without, who has given more to this cause than you have in the past 2 months since you joined. You've given an absolute tiny fraction of what this man did to bring us all here, to orchestrate all of this. And you're laughing at it. I just thought that scene was incredible. And the fact that Mon, who had more reason to disagree with Luthen than probably anyone else in the show, was immediately there to not necessarily just take Luthen's word. She wanted to see what was going on, and she wanted more information, but to be there right with Cassian to defend Luthen, even to my guy, to Bail, who Bail was like, he had a little bit of spite to shoot at Luthen too, and it's like, because he's only been fed probably the negative stuff that Mon talks about him, that like, this guy, this guy's like crazy. I don't know if we should bring him here. But then I love that through Clea waking up and getting herself out of the hospital, we can circle back to the Vel and Cassian scene, but I'm going to jump to Vel and Clea for a second. To Clea ripping out, her sensors and her tubes and stuff in the hospital and going out into the rain, this dark, rainy night. And then she's found by Vel. They go and have a drink, and she hears it straight from Clea, straight from the heart, basically. And that is what ends up convincing Vel to convince Mon that they're telling the truth. Which then, that leads to Mon telling Bail, who then goes to Cassian and gives him the permission, and you get that great "May the Force be with you" line. And then you end with, we're not even getting to the final shot yet, but you end with Clea waking up in Vel's hut, to the rain is gone, and that she, in a way, she's seeing the sunrise that Luthen knew they would never see, and that she's seeing. And that was just like crazy to me, just how well constructed everything in this show was. And then I'm kind of going into everything here, so you can loop back to any of this. I also definitely want to talk about this
I was just going to bring that up.
Let's let's talk about this scene for a second. We get this scene first, which is this incredible back and forth between Krennic and Partagaz, which, I love that they use their first names with each other. When he's like, honestly, Leo, this is getting crazy. And he's like, isn't the Death Star supposed to be done? Like, he's like, any day now.
I love seeing the levels to this, where
the hierarchy of it.
And obviously, and just, I keep thinking back to obviously Krennic talking to all of them, knowing what he has to go face in Rogue One. When he sees Vader, and Vader's like, don't fucking, don't get ahead of yourself, okay? Just get it done, I thought that was just seeing that all was great. But I was gonna say, what'd you think of Krennic giving Dedra the what for?
I love this scene so much. This might be my favorite Krennic scene of the entire show. Well, never mind. It is my favorite Krennic scene of this show for sure. The way that he is so physically forceful with her, I think is like, it's like a terrible thing to see. Obviously, like, he's a terrible person, but the way that Ben Mendelsohn plays it is just so menacing and so terrifying. Like, she's just this like bag of meat that's like, you dumb like puppet, like you have no idea the worlds that I walk in. Like, he comes in, has my standing had such a precipitous fall that I have to be here dealing with the likes of you. Like, what kind of a line is that? And then he puts his finger on the top of her head and like spins it around. I just thought that all of that was so awesome. And then, like you said, the hierarchy of it, it's like, this guy is the biggest bad there is. He's terrifying in this show. Just in conversation, he's terrifying in this show. And yet we know a couple hours after this guy's going to be shitting his pants with Vader. Not even Vader. He's going to be going toe to toe with Tarkin, who he can kind of tussle with Tarkin. They're two different branches of the military, but Tarkin is still definitely above him, but they can tussle because the Death Star is Krennic's. But then obviously with Vader, it's no contest. I mean, Krennic is, I think he knows very quickly he should not have made that meeting in his calendar. But I have your assurance you'll speak to the Emperor about this. Why don't you shut up or whatever? Yeah. Careful not to choke on your aspirations.
Correct.
I love that guy so much. But it's like you're choking out Dedra and getting physical with her, and then it's like in a couple of days you're gonna be dead by your own thing. And I love the timeline. I mean, honestly, I'm quite shocked at how specific they got with timeline with a lot of this stuff when they're like, Yularen found out last month, the Death Star should be done any day. And I guess it's not that surprising because in Rogue One you see the dish being lowered into it,
Right.
but it's just like it's crazy that it's like even somebody like Yularen didn't know what the Death Star was literally 5 weeks before he was killed by it, like before it blows up. Like the Death Star, after 19 years, on again, off again, but after 19 years of development and construction, 10 years under Krennic, it's like the thing lasts like barely a month and then it's gone. It's also just crazy to think that it's like Cassian doing all this stuff at Yavin, and then a week later Luke will be there. Like it's just so wild that that's how far along in the timeline we've taken all these characters. Is you're really starting to butt up against the original Star Wars stuff, which I thought was great. But yeah, just the scene with Krennic and Partagaz, and then the scene with Krennic and Dedra was just fantastic.
Partagaz choosing to take his own life.
Man, I love Anton Lesser as Partagaz in the show so much, and that ending with where you hear Nemik's manifesto playing, and you think it's just playing for us, and then you realize, and then it shows Partagaz, and you still think it's just playing for us, the audience, and then Legret walks into the room. And he's like, I'm assuming you've heard this. He's like, still no theories as to who it is. And he's like, no idea, but it's spreading. Like, I like the feeling of, he's like, I had this all wrong. His whole season 1, we are healthcare workers. We address the sickness. We do this. We do that. We are prim and we are proper. And we do the things that are right and the things that will help. And all this stuff, like he's realizing like it was all for nothing.
Yeah.
All this shit is going to fall apart because it all fell apart before, and it'll keep falling apart as long as all this stuff is happening. And back to what he was right about in that speech, the longer it takes to identify the illness, the harder it is to fix the problem. And guess what? The 5 years that this show takes place over was too long to find Luthen. And in those 5 years, he has put together all of this stuff that is snowballed and led into the Rebel Alliance, and Partagaz sees early that it's fucking over. And he's just like, and I love the thing with him and Legret, who Legret knows that it's like, hey, when he goes, can I take a moment to collect my thoughts? I think right away Legret knows what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And I think right away Legret understands that that means that he's probably next to be in charge. So there's probably a moment of, wow, this guy's making this decision.
Yeah.
But it's this guy that I've looked up to for all these years, but now I'm going to be looked at to fill this position. And I loved all that. And I loved the little moment with Legret just putting his hand up to the stormtroopers when they were like, and he was like, just leave it.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. And I just loved Anton Lesser in this show all the way through. Just, he was so good as Partagaz. Which then leads us to this end moment here, where we get Cassian putting on the jacket, which I wanted to talk about in the last arc when he's getting the message from Bix. The shots are almost completely mirrored, where in that one, he's running from his hut to try and get to her. And in this one, he's taking his time. He's watering his plants. He's taking a nice walk, and he sees the Force healer again, who had that great word of, you are gathering people and you are gathering pain.
Right.
And you see everything about, and it's what I titled the episode, this episode, politics, pain, and purpose. And it's like you see all the I should just call it politics, pain, purpose, and people, because you see all the people that he has met and that have interacted with him along the way. You get the memories and the flashes and the understanding that he's thinking about everybody that he's lost when he's watering the plants, with like his mother used to do with her plants and everything like that, that he's finally in this place where he feels like it's good. He tells, again, they have to rip your heart out with the whole Vel telling him, you should really find Bix, and him going, yeah, I think after this one, I might, I might really be done,
Ugh.
and just take it easy for a little while after
Ugh.
this, which obviously we know
Yeah.
what happens. And just that slow walk with the music building and him seeing everybody that has happened and us getting flashes to people. This one obviously being my favorite.
That was crazy. I was like, oh my God, he's alive.
Yeah, I was like, I had, again, I had the worry that like we were gonna drop Perrin and we were gonna drop B2 Emo, both of which didn't happen. And I
That
was
was the
so
other one
happy.
I was worried
Yeah,
about.
I was so happy about. But I was so happy to see Perrin. I was literally going like, hang on, let me cut back. I was like sitting there like this, like show us something with Perrin, and he got like a nice meaty like 15 seconds, where you see, you assume probably once Mon went down, the investigation started and they went, who was running her money, and probably Skulden got arrested.
Yeah.
So now you see Skulden's wife with Perrin. And I saw some people going like, oh yeah, he's just still partying. And I'm like, that is not a happy guy. That is a guy who went, that's a guy who went, man, did I fuck it all up. Like, I could have gone with her to Yavin. I could have been there with her if I cared about the right things, if I cared about Mon the way that I was supposed to, the way that I should. And also, they talk about this in season 1. Perrin was just as young as Mon when they got married. They were both teenagers. They were both basically kids. So it's not entirely his fault. It's not like he was an adult choosing to be in this relationship. But I think it was a great, just in literally 10, 15 seconds to go, this guy's living this life on Coruscant still, but he's second guessing and regretting all the decisions that brought him to this place. And on top of that, he lost his ponytail. So it's like, what are you going to do? But I love that he's just ends, his whole speech about find the joy in your life, and all of the joy in his life is gone. And I thought that just that 10 seconds revisiting Perrin, which I was worried we weren't going to get. I thought that 10 seconds was perfect. Just absolutely perfect. And then the very last thing, obviously, that we see is this, which we all figured that Bix would be just out of the show after the message. And we were all wrong, because Tony Gilroy said we have one more thing to break your heart, which is the Harrison duel did. Turns out Bix was pregnant, which I do want to dive a little deeper into, because like we were hinting at with the last arc, obviously super heavily informs her decision to leave, because now you figure she probably knew that she was pregnant and knew that there is no way in hell, if Cassian knew that she was pregnant, that he would ever focus on anything ever again. Namely because he was an orphan. He was left without a family and without anybody. And sure, he found family, but you thought he was overprotective of her before. Once he found out that she was pregnant, it would be insane. But yeah, what did you think about the final shot, kind of the full lead up to Rogue One? I'm going to go find Tivik on the Ring of Kafrene, and then going into seeing kind of the look at everybody. We got Dedra in some sort of a prison system.
Yeah, I thought seeing Dedra in the same prison that they were kind of trapped in season 1 was like chef's kiss. A few Galen Erso name drops as well throughout, I think, this arc, which I thought, again, just kind of sprinkling that stuff in, connecting it to where we're going. I thought was all really good. When we first, at the end, when we first pan down to the planet and we see B2 Emo, I was like, oh my God, they left him.
Yeah.
And then obviously we see Bix. It's like, oh, thank God somebody's there with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing that was just really, it kind of brings, and I think it really ties everything together well. Again, just like really, again, sad, because we know what happens. We know he doesn't, unfortunately, he doesn't make it. He makes it, obviously all the way to the end of Rogue One, and then
this show ends. He's literally got like 5 days left.
Yeah, and where did those two people go? His son or daughter? I don't know if it was a boy or girl.
I think in everything they just say like child.
Okay, his child and Bix. Where do they end up?
Mm-hmm.
How do they find
his child Ryan Gosling?
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah.
So I also think you could go a lot of different ways with some of these characters if they ever wanted to do something else. You know, like I said, the Luthen kind of spin-off type thing where he's fighting these battles with Clea, that kind of spin-off type, you know, you do a mini series. I don't know. I think that would be really interesting if you do something with Bix and their child together. You know, that could be something. I think they left it off in a really good spot where they could go if they wanted to. I don't think they will ever, but where they could go all different ways and make some, you know, really interesting, you know, show or movie, whatever.
Yeah. I think to me, I think the easiest thing to do, I would love to see more with Clea and everybody, and this could be inside of what I'm about to say. To me, I think you do a Mon Mothma show. I mean, if you went Cassian's story is over, but guess what? Tony Gilroy is going to come back and he's going to make 3 more seasons in this exact same visual style and tone. What do you want to see? Mothma. Like a Mon Mothma series is one, and you would bring in Willman and Bix and everybody that's still there. You know, do everything. Show me this same tone and angle about what Mon Mothma was doing up to Return of the Jedi. Like, show me her original trilogy. Why wasn't she on Yavin? Where was she during that time? What were the deals that she was doing? How did she establish the base on Hoth? How did all this come about to then finally everything coming to a head, above Andor? I think would be fantastic to see that, because it's like, we know from the comics and from the books and even from some of the movies that it's like, it's not just a world of heroes and bounty hunters. Like, there are these shadow people getting things done. One of the most famous Mon Mothma lines ever: many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Yeah.
This, in Return of the Jedi, they talk about a network of spies bringing us the plans for the second Death Star. So it's like, they even talk about it back in 1983, that there's a network of spies that are also working for the rebellion. It's not just X-Wings and lightsabers. It's all the back people that, nobody will toast to. People complain that Chewbacca didn't get a medal. Where's Luthen's fucking medal? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, come on. But yeah, I also love that Dodonna, he took the weekend off. He said, I'm not going to be on Yavin this week.
Were you surprised that his name's escaping me? Hold on. Willman survived?
I wasn't surprised. It was just one of those things that was like, he was the most likely to go in some heroic way. So I thought it was really fitting that it's like, no, he didn't die. He gets to be another hero of the rebellion, and maybe he goes on to be with Luke and all this stuff. And also, none of it bothered me of like, well, where were Clea, Vel, and Willman in Rogue One? Where, it's like, where were all these characters? It's like, well, they're in the same place that Radis was in A New Hope. They off screen. They're not there.
Yeah.
So I have really no issues with that. But yeah, I wasn't surprised that Willman didn't die. In fact, once it kind of seemed like he wasn't, I settled into just like, I think that makes sense for the character. That's like, he has done all this stuff. He's like the Wedge. He's like the Wedge of this show, where it's like, he's been to all the crazy shit that everybody else has, but he's just kind of there for the ride. He's like, man, Luke, can you believe we survived another one? Yeah, Wedge, what were you doing out there? I was flying the ship. Okay. All right. These Ewoks know how to party. But yeah, anything else? I know there's a lot to get to, and I'm sure there's stuff that we missed, but anything else, broad strokes, that you want to hit on Andor before we head out of here?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Covered more than I thought we were gonna. I was really worried we were gonna miss a lot of stuff.
I think I was saying to myself, is this the best?
Like Star Wars?
Is this the best Star Wars since like original trilogy?
I mean, see, everybody is saying that. This is like head and shoulders better than the original trilogy. Like, I don't know what people are talking. What are people talking about? I mean, like, I love those movies, but it's like, to say that those movies are like better crafted than this is like kind of crazy to me. And I get that it's totally two different things, but like, I'm not like, you will get at most out of me, or at least out of me, it's like on par with the original
Yeah,
trilogy.
I think you have to give some credence to those movies are why the
For being the
show,
first. Yeah.
you know,
For coming
yeah.
first, it gets a huge
Not
leg
to
up
say
for
that,
coming first, for
not to
sure.
say that this show doesn't work in any sort of other universe, obviously,
Mhm.
because of course it does. But I feel like you have to give some props to what came before to
Yeah.
get to this point. I was hesitant to say like animation wise because I feel like that's a whole different kind of,
Mhm.
we got 7 seasons of Clone Wars and however many seasons of Rebels,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think this is, again, I think it's definitely better, obviously, than the sequel trilogy, and then I think it's better than any of the shows that have come before,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
excluding obviously any animation stuff.
I think it's better than any of the animation. I mean, I
And
think
then I would
yeah.
take you there, and then even prequel, I think probably
Yeah.
hands
Oh,
down
yeah.
better than any prequels. So
I think it's head and can I be totally honest right now? Like, to me, I love the original trilogy. I love it so much. It's what we
Mhm,
grew up on. You know, we are old enough that to us, growing up, there was the original trilogy, and then there were the movies that are coming out right now.
mhm,
There was the
yeah,
prequels that were like coming out when we were in elementary school,
yeah,
and and then everything else that came out, slowly over the years. Um, but for us, it was like Star Wars was 6 movies. Um, what the hell was I just saying? What was it? Oh yeah, but to me, honestly, I think the only competition I love those movies is what I'm trying to say, but I think there's a difference between how much Star Wars means to me and means to
mhm,
everybody who's a Star Wars fan and loves Star Wars, and executional filmmaking.
yeah,
I think are 2 different things. And it's like I will hear out anybody that goes, "Well, to me, Star Wars is the movies." That's like it. Nothing's ever going to top the
fair
movies.
enough. Yeah,
I think that's totally fair. But I think executionally, to me, it's like I was rewatching season 1, and I was like, this is the kind of Star Wars that I'm like, this is just as important to me as any of the 9 movies.
mhm,
Like this feels like essential storytelling to what Star Wars is. Like Mando, yeah, it's a good show, but it's like that's like a fun adventure show. This
right,
is furthering the story of Star Wars, of
yeah,
everything. And it's so funny because it's like everybody's like, oh, it's the least tied in show. And it's like, no, it's honestly one of the most tied in shows. It just is showing it to you in a different way.
mhm,
And I think that's what's incredible about the show, what keeps it fresh every single week. Um, and it's why I'll rewatch this over and over and over again, these 24 episodes forever, for the rest of my life. I mean,
yeah,
this is like, to me, if I had like a super marathon of Star Wars, if somebody said you have 12 hours that I'm gonna put on anything Star Wars you want, it would probably be like Siege of Mandalore, Rogue One,
mhm,
you know, Empire, Revenge of the Sith, and then like 6 of the best Andor episodes.
yeah,
Like that would cover it for, and then maybe like the Bad Batch finale. But I would get my animation in with Siege of Mandalore because that's like a movie.
yeah,
Um, but honestly, like it's up there, man. Like I think looking at it, I just I just love this show so much. Like I'm literally in the midst of rewatching season 1 right now. Also technically in the midst of watching season 2 for the first time, and I am just dying to get in there and rewatch it again.
mhm.
It is just so good on every level. But anyways, I've to quote the show, I've bluffed and blustered too long. What do you what are some final thoughts or final things you want to hit on, or just your thoughts overall on its place in the franchise and how it's going to sit with you as a Star Wars fan,
Yeah,
as a TV, as a film fan?
yeah, like I was even saying, again, kind of going off that whole conversation we literally just had, I think this, and I'm just packaging this with Rogue One. I think this is just, you know,
Yeah,
close first to obviously original trilogy. But like you said, the execution of everything, of the story, of how everything looks, the acting, all that stuff is just amazing, and the best, probably one of the best. No, I wouldn't say probably. I would say probably the best show like Disney has put out, at least on the streaming service, or maybe anything that
Oh
they've put
yeah.
out in the streaming
Oh yeah.
service. It
And
just
again, that's totally a matter of taste. Like
right.
I loved Agatha all along,
Yeah.
probably as much as I love this show. But I'm not going to say that Agatha all along is as good as this
No.
show.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's two very different things in my mind. And
Right.
if I had my car keys, I have Agatha on my keychain.
Yeah. It just feels like Tony Gilroy had a vision for what he wanted to do, and they let him do that. And nobody was kind of like, you can't do this or that, or, we're going to change it halfway through. And actually you want to do this now. They just let him kind of see his vision. Like I said earlier, maybe less is more in this, who knows what it would have looked like if it was 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Maybe we would have been
60 hours.
Yeah. Maybe we would have been extending out a little bit, past what we need. But yeah, I just this show will be missed.
Somebody brought up a great point, which was if they were going to lower it, they should have lowered it to, but I get it, it's contractual. It's like you sign up for the seasons that there were going to be 12 episode seasons. But somebody said, imagine if they said the second season was going to be 16 and it was going to be four episode arcs. Just to give a little bit more to flesh out whatever you wanted to have, 3.5 more hours to kind of play with, I think would have just been awesome. But what we got, I thought was incredible. I think it's going to stand the test of time. I think it's probably going to be criminally robbed at the Emmys. But man, I really hope it's not. I mean, it is just such a great show on every single level. Yeah, but I guess that'll do it somehow with our Andor discussion and review. If I have free time this week, because we did kind of segment this out, I might put up our reviews of the individual arcs on the channel. But yeah, we have our Thunderbolts review up right now, our non-spoiler discussion, and our full spoiler review is up on the channel right now. We will definitely be back next week to finally talk about The Last of Us again, which we also have to get caught up in talking about because it's been a couple weeks there. But there's some great TV going on right now. Some big news dropping, and then obviously starting real soon, we got a lot of movies to cover. So we're probably gonna be talking Last of Us next week, and then probably Mission Impossible the week after that.
Yep.
So we will take a look, and we'll definitely have a Mission Impossible review up right after we see the movie, but probably have a full in-depth talk about it, and probably Last of Us as well the week after that. So other than that, that will do it for me. I have been one of your hosts, Sean Monk. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Share this with anybody who loves Andor or just wants to talk about cool TV stuff. And that'll do it for me.
I've been there was TJ Cornwell. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on all social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. And we will see you next time.
Boom.